There was a new teacher named Haruki who was heading to a new school to work there. He really loved the idea and was excited on his way. The city where the school was located was very beautiful, with lots of restaurants and shops, so much so that he was greatly impressed and admired it a lot. He saw the school from afar and said, "That must be the school. It looked very nice." He opened the map he had with him and said, "Yes, this is the right location on the map." Haruki began to recall that he had worked at a high school exactly 1 year ago, and that was his first day there. He was observing how things went. His personality was very weak, to the point that once, a student threatened him, which made him anxious. However, he decided to head to the new school, repeating to himself, "I'm going to be a good teacher. This looks like a nice school, and their uniform is respectable too." He was enthusiastic, as it was his first day at the new school, and he decided to take the opportunity this time to become a better teacher and face his challenges bravely. In dealing with high school students, when they first arrive, they find the principal standing behind them, who says to them, "Welcome, you must be the new teacher, Haruki." Haruki replies, "You are the principal. How are you?" The principal responds, "I am grateful. You have kindly come, and it was my invitation for you to teach here at the school." Then Haruki replies, "I should be the one thanking you for the invitation." The principal says, "Your family has helped me a lot in the past, and I'm grateful to them. I hope you'll be here at the school to teach the students." Haruki responds, "I can't handle all these kind words." The principal then takes Haruki to the classroom he will be responsible for and says, "Let's go, hero. The students are waiting for you." Haruki responds, "Don't worry, I'll do my best. I'll be a very good teacher." He was extremely excited. As he enters the classroom, he discovers that there are students who look like monsters with supernatural powers, called yokai. He exclaims, "What is this? All these are yokai?" He quickly shuts the door and says, "It seems I've entered the wrong room. I'm sorry." The principal sees Haruki's expression when he exits quickly and says to him, "Really? Do you know what's happening inside the classroom?" Haruki replies, "No. What's happening?" The principal says, "Nothing. The students are just arguing." Haruki, surprised, responds, "What are they arguing about? I saw yokai everywhere. What is this place?" The principal answers, "You're in a special school where all yokai students from across Japan come to learn. This school is specialized for them." The principal then says, "You are the first human teacher to work with us here." Suddenly, Haruki starts running, but the principal appears everywhere, saying, "I'm a yokai too, and that's normal. We handle it naturally." He then grabs Haruki's hand and says, "Come on, go back to your class." Haruki responds, "No, let me go." At that moment, something like a star, with a shape of supernatural powers, emerges from the principal's hand, but Haruki didn't recognize it. He then gently pushed him back into the classroom with his cane. Once inside, Haruki was terrified, but he couldn't speak. He ran and hid under his desk out of sheer fear, while the students looked at him with puzzled expressions, as if wondering, where did he go? After 40 minutes of him not emerging from under the desk, the students began to talk amongst themselves. Is he dead, or is he going to come out? Suddenly, a student named Sanoko got up and went to him, asking, "What's wrong with you, sir?" Haruki replied, "I'm human." Sanoko said, "You're never going to come out from under the desk, are you?" Haruki replied, "I was just about to." When he grabbed his hand, the teacher's clothes suddenly tore off. At this point, the girls in the class started screaming, exclaiming, "What's this? How did you do that?" Suddenly, a very short student in the class asked Sanoko, "What did you do? Since when have you been using your power?" Sanoko replied, "I didn't mean to, but I was a bit upset." The principal entered the room and told him, "You need to understand that you shouldn't be afraid of your students." Haruki replied, "I'm not afraid of them because they're students. I'm afraid because they're transforming yokai." The principal said to him, "Don't worry. I'll give you a book about the Transformers, so you can learn more about them, and another book from me to you about the school uniform." And he added, "If you do well in your job, I'll give you a special uniform of your own." Haruki then returned to the class to teach after thanking the principal, his eyes shining with excitement and confidence. He began to introduce himself to the students, saying, "I'm Haruki." He then started to see who was present and who was not by taking attendance. He called the students one by one, trying to learn about their powers. When he called Sanoko, he didn't turn around, which made Haruki feel suspicious. He thought to himself, "I'm sure he'll do it." But Haruki decided not to care. Haruki called on the student whose turn it was, the shortest child in the class, and said, "This student is absent today because he was at his older sister's wedding and hasn't arrived yet." The absent student entered the classroom and said, "How are you, my friends? I'm back, and I've brought you lots of wonderful things." He added, "I've missed you all so much." Haruki asked him, "What's this? Who are you?" The student replied, "I am the new teacher. My name is Haruki." Upon finding out that the student was human, he aggressively attacked him and hit him hard, causing Haruki to fall to the ground. The short student then stepped in and said, "I forgot to tell you something about me. I don't like humans because my brother, who is also a yokai, married a human, and since then, I've hated all humans." Haruki stood there, shocked, thinking to himself, "Is this student going to take out his anger on me? Why doesn't he just confront his sister instead? I didn't do anything to him." As he pondered this, the angry student, named Heiju, who has the power to control mud, began to hit him using his power. Haruki tried to defend himself, but things began to get worse. Suddenly, while Haruki was on the ground, he said, "I can't go back there again. I was there and wasn't happy at all. Also, I faced many problems. Even elementary students would tease me. I was very weak, and nobody treated me well, nor did I have a friend since I came into this world." Haruki continued, "And despite all that, I have become a teacher. Maybe I can be something and talk to the students." He looked at them and said, "I'm sorry that I'm human, but that's something I can't change." As he looked at the students, he noticed they were looking at him sympathetically. Then he said, "Let's continue with the roll call." He called a girl in the class, but no one answered. The short student said, "She hasn't come since the beginning of winter." Haruki said, "How is that possible? We have a class photo session tomorrow, and everyone needs to be present. I need to go to her and convince her to come back." Heiju replied, "If she knows you're coming, she'll never return." So the teacher set out to the girls' dormitory where the absent student was staying, taking Sanoko and the short student with him. The short student warned, "Be careful. You're still unknown in the girls' dormitory, and they might not treat you well." Haruki asked, "Why does everyone here seem to dislike me, and why do I keep facing problems?" The student replied, "That's just how it is here, but I'm on alert. We brought Sanoko with us, and we're ready." Heiju added, "Stay silent. Nothing will happen. I'm going to bring back the student for the photo shoot tomorrow." That girl, Haruki said, "Among the transformed ones, some are supposed to have better luck than others. If I can bring her back, maybe my luck will turn as well." Sanoko responded, "You surely don't think like this, do you?" Haruki answered, "No, of course not. There's nothing like that. In fact, I'll look for information about her in the book I have to see what it says." He then turned to the short student and asked, "Hey, what does the book say about me?" The student replied, "Let's open it and see." They opened the book together, and Haruki found that it said, "Short transformable ones can only transform if you place a paper on their head or put nuts on their heads." Haruki asked, "Is this for real?" The student replied, "Of course not. I can't use my power that way. This is really old stuff. Look, the book is 200 years old. We are in the 21st century now." Haruki continued to search through the book and asked Sanoko, "I didn't find anything written about you in the book, or about those like you who transform." But Sanoko didn't respond. Haruki turned his face the other way, as the short student remarked, "Look, the book is not only old, but also incomplete." They moved away from the book and went to the house of the absent girl, knocking on the door, but she didn't want to open it for them. Haruki said, "What do we do now?" The short student replied, "I have an idea. I'll place a paper on my head to transform, and then enter." And indeed, he transformed into smoke and went through the keyhole. After entering, Haruki mentioned, "What we are doing might be wrong." Sanoko agreed, "Yes, it really is wrong." Once the student was inside, he discovered the girl had placed a spell on the door. 300 strikes fired out, and he was forced to return outside. Then, the girl slid a note out from under the door without opening it, threatening them to leave her alone or else. Angered, Haruki said, "No one respects me anywhere I go." Sanoko was also surprised, commenting, "Well, it seems he knows himself." Suddenly, the short student received a message from a classmate informing them that this girl had posted online, announcing that a human teacher was trying to break into her house. They called out to her, but she didn't respond, only saying, "Leave me alone." That star appeared once more from his hand, and for the second time, the door flung open forcefully from its place. Suddenly, the short student asked, "What's this? Is there a strong wind blowing through here or what?" The teacher replied, "I don't know. I guess I'm just lucky." Haruki entered. When he entered the girl's room, she exclaimed, "Shut up, I'm busy right now. I'm saving the world from danger. Can't you see?" Haruki replied, "Sorry, but what are you doing?" The girl said, "Yes, I'm playing, but it's a very important game." Then she asked, "And what about you all? How did you get in here? And how dare you enter my room?" Sanoko responded, "How long will you stay away from us like this?" She didn't answer him, but the short student said, "Wait, isn't this the game that was given to you in class?" The girl replied, "Yes. It's the game I took initially. It was so amazing that I completed it in one day. Then Heiju promised to bring me the second part, and since then, I've loved these games and can't leave the screen." Everyone collectively replied, "What's this boredom? I mean, is your whole life revolving around games and just sitting here?" Then Haruki said, "I thought something serious was stopping you from studying here, and suddenly I find myself pleading with you. I want you to come back to school with me. I promise you'll find things that you'll like more than games, and you can pause the game and return to it later. It will remain the same. Nothing will change about it." She replied, "But you're on your knees wiping your face in my underwear." Haruki said, "What? Sorry, I didn't mean to do that." As he tried to clarify, she said, "You don't care about the clothes." Then she kicked him, and at the same time, got up from the chair. The short student said, "With this attitude, you'll come back to school again." The girl answered, "Yes. This man made me think about returning." The teacher responded, "That's not exactly a compliment." Then the teacher said to the girl, "You can play when you grow up, but you definitely can't go back to school once you're older. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I promise I'll get you the special sailor school uniform, and your black hair will look beautiful in it." The next day, the teacher headed to the classroom, asking himself, "Will she come or not? I want her to come." Meanwhile, there were yokai teachers talking to the school principal, asking, "Principal, who is this human, and how did you hire him? Isn't it because you know his ancient family?" The principal principal replied, 1,000 years ago, we yokai coexisted with humans everywhere. There was an ancient hero and warrior who punished any yokai who did wrong. But now, in the world we live in, humans are everywhere. We can't appear as we used to in the past. This man, his family inherited that power, and the grandson from that family is Haruki, the second son. And Haruki interjected, actually, he has problems with humans, and he feels weak around them. But to us, he is very strong. He added, because having him with us means we are safe, and this is also good for the students. At the same time, Sanoko was with them and said, I learned the story about the new teacher, and I saw his power when he opened the door for the girl at home, and I know he was hiding it. Then Sanoko noticed the book about the girl's school uniform and asked, what's this? The principal replied, brought to me, and I accidentally brought it here. The short student said, don't worry, we won't tell anyone. In the meantime, the student Haruki was waiting for arrived and wanted to pass by, saying, why are you blocking the way? Haruki replied, it's good that you came. The sailor uniform looks nice on you. He then opened the door for her, and she entered the classroom. He then said to her, what? You're wearing pants under this uniform. That's against school rules. She replied, what are you talking about? Sanoko added, he loves the girls' school uniforms. The teacher retorted, didn't you say you wouldn't tell anyone? I think the girls see me negatively. I feel like trash. Sanoko responded, yeah, you are trash indeed. Why do you treat me like this? The teacher replied, I absorb my energy from people's frustration. At that moment, Heiju came and said, hey teacher, I'm sorry for what I did on the first day with you. I didn't know you were that strong. He added, and did you bring the student back again? The teacher, smiling, replied, sweetheart. Then everyone gathered to take the group photo together. After they finished the photo session, Haruki walked with Sanoko and said, I am so happy. So many beautiful things happened. Sanoko replied, yes, you did some great things and worked hard for them too. Haruki said, what? I can't believe what I'm hearing. Are you thanking me? Sanoko answered, yes, you heard correctly. But suddenly, in a burst of joy, a water hose burst, and he and Sanoko slipped and fell to the ground. When the student came over, she said to him, were you doing all this to bring good luck to me? Well, when I wear red, my luck becomes terribly bad. She mentioned that it was written in the book about the yokai. She then added, and now you're between two not-so-good people. Sanoko was standing behind her, so he asked, who are the other two people? Suddenly, Sanoko decided to perform a suplex on Haruki, causing him to fall to the ground. Haruki, having taken up a teaching position at the school for mutants, communicated with them in Japanese, as usual. One day, as he was climbing something, he suddenly heard a cracking sound. Confused, he thought, what just broke? A teacher following him with a camera reassured him, what's broken can be fixed. Later, Haruki joined the other teachers at a restaurant, treating them to a meal. He enthusiastically commented, the food looks really tasty. The teachers expressed their gratitude. We're happy to be together. We want to get to know each other better since we don't know much about what happened before. One teacher introduced himself. My name is Mano, and I teach in the classroom next to yours. Haruki added, we also have Mr. Hatanaka with us, who handles attendance issues. He then said warmly, it's a pleasure to meet you all. As they continued talking, Hatanaka started taking away Mano's alcohol each time he tried to pour a glass. Haruki, curious, asked, why are you doing that? Hatanaka calmly replied, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Hatanaka further explained, we have school tomorrow morning, and we all need a good night's sleep. No one should pass out from drinking. Haruki pointed out, isn't tomorrow the sports day? Hatanaka confirmed, yes. But Mano mentioned it's going to be a very exhausting day. When Haruki inquired why, Mano replied, because we're also taking the students for checkups. Mano continued, every year, one of the students gets sick and ends up in the hospital due to the strain. So, today is a tough day. Haruki, feeling weary, muttered, I'm already tired. The next day, Haruki addressed the students in class, saying, we must listen carefully to what the teachers say. The students began asking questions, expressing concerns about their own growth and health. One student nervously asked, what if I gain weight, or if I'm tired, or if I don't grow taller? A short student asked, what if I'm not a mutant? Haruki, attempting to be reassuring, responded, I can't help with that, but I'm sure you're a mutant. After class, Haruki met Mr. Hatanaka, who was waiting for him. Hatanaka said, Haruki, I need your help. Haruki agreed, sure. Go ahead. Hatanaka tasked him with overseeing the eye exams, instructing, go to that room over there and call this number. Then, raising his voice, Hatanaka reiterated, call this number, and you'll understand. At the eye exam room, Haruki coordinated with the doctor over the phone. The doctor assessed a student's vision and noted, this student's vision is 130. Haruki, uncertain, asked, I don't know if that's a good result for mutants. The student, upset, lamented, I dropped half a point from last year. Haruki asked him, will that half a point affect your life? Will you still be able to live after that? After finishing the exams, Haruki returned to Hatanaka and reported, the eye exams are finished. Hatanaka suddenly yelled, you're late. Take the short student and go to the nurse's room quickly. The nurse instructed them to enter a small cage for their examination to ensure their well-being. As soon as they stepped inside, they suddenly transformed into small animals, and the cage door closed on them. One of them remarked, "This cage is enchanted, and you won't be able to get out." A voice from inside apologized. "Sorry, but we have a doctor from abroad." The doctor appeared and said, "We're just going to give you some shots to take care of your health." Seeing the needles, the students started screaming, "No, we don't want this. This is punishment, not treatment." Just then, Teacher Hatanaka entered, announcing, "Wait, Mono, you're getting a shot too." The mutants tried to escape from the cage, but they couldn't break free. Mono instructed, "Doctor, take them. They're in your hands now." One of the mutants grumbled, "Fine, Mono, but you still owe me money. Give me my money back." The doctor, overwhelmed, replied, "Well, I'm busy with surgeries. I can't handle the injections right now." Haruki, trying to assist, grabbed the doctor and took over giving the shots, attempting to calm the students by saying, "Don't worry. You won't feel a thing." One of the students nervously requested, "Okay, teacher, talk to me about something so I don't notice it." Haruki agreed and started chatting to distract them. As the doctor approached, the anxious mutant suddenly darted away, causing the needle to fly and land straight into Haruki's head, piercing right in the middle of his brain. Haruki screamed in agony, quickly wrapping his head in a bandage. He anxiously asked, "Doctor, I'm human, not a mutant. Am I going to be okay?" The doctor nonchalantly reassured him, "Of course. Don't worry, I've tested this on some humans before." Haruki, shocked, demanded, "What do you mean?" The doctor explained with a grin, "I mean, I've conducted experiments on a human being, and 2 days ago, I created a new, amazing injection. You can try it." Haruki firmly declined. "No, absolutely not." Trying to move on, Haruki turned to the students and said, "All right, we're done." But Mono interrupted, "No, there's one last thing. We still need to measure the students' heights." They approached a very tall mutant, and Mono commented, "Mutants like this are the ones who built the lakes and mountains." Haruki asked hesitantly, "Do I have to climb him to measure his height?" Mono replied, "Yes, of course. You're setting an example for the students to follow." Haruki protested, "Then why don't you or Hatanaka climb?" Mono brushed it off, saying, "No, leave him out of it. He's not capable after that shot." Frustrated, Haruki proposed, "Let's bet on who's going to do it." But unfortunately, Haruki lost the bet. When he reached the student's shoulder, he complained, "Why do I keep losing these bets?" The tall student shrugged and said, "I don't know. Why do you bet in the first place?" Mono, growing impatient, commanded, "Stop complaining and climb higher." Haruki, now at the student's ear, remarked, "I'm at your ear now." The student advised, "Well, be careful." Suddenly, a gust of wind hit, shaking Haruki's balance. His school book flew out of his hand, and he cried out, "What is this?" My book flew away. He accidentally let go of the rope and began to fall. At that moment, he spotted Sanko approaching in the distance. Sanko called out, "Die! Don't talk about dying right now." Haruki, relieved, thanked him. "Thank you for saving me." Once they reached the top together, Sanko proudly declared, "He's 130 meters tall." The tall student beamed, "Did you know? I've surpassed the Statue of Liberty back home." Mono called out, "Come down now, that's enough. I'm going to check on the other students." Haruki, realizing his predicament, asked, "How am I supposed to get down now? Why do I have to climb down alone?" He turned to Sanko and suggested, "You can carry me down on your back." Sanko laughed and agreed, "All right, but you're going to make me die laughing." Haruki playfully added, "If you were really my friend, you'd easily help me down." Suddenly, as Haruki tried to lower himself onto the student's shoulder, he sneezed forcefully, sending Haruki and Sanko flying through the air. The tall student, horrified, apologized, but there was no one left to hear his apology. Surprised, meanwhile, Mono was walking with Hatanaka, saying, "Thank goodness, the day is finally over." The short student, Sanko's friend, approached the teachers and asked, "Where's Sanko?" Hatanaka then asked, "And where's Haruki?" It turned out that Sanko and Haruki had both ended up in the principal's office due to the sneeze of the tall student. In the office, Sanko said to Haruki, "What's happening to me?" Haruki asked, "What do you mean?" Sanko replied, "Ever since you came, I feel tired, and bad things keep happening to me. Stay away from me." Haruki retorted, "You're the one who transformed, not me. Did you forget?" At that moment, the principal entered and commanded, "Be quiet, all of you." Haruki quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, principal. I'll pay for the broken glass." The principal responded, "I understand what happened, but the glass is very expensive. Your salary won't cover it." The principal continued, "But instead of paying for the glass, you'll do something else." Haruki nervously asked, "What do you mean by something else?" The principal instructed him to take the students and clean the school's swimming pool. The tall student who had caused the accident apologized. "I'm sorry, it's all because of me." Haruki reassured him, "Don't worry about it, just try to stay tall." While some students were hesitant to go, others were excited at the thought of being near the water. Haruki asked, "Does anyone know if there's a swimming pool at the school?" The students replied, "We used to go to the ocean every year, but we're not going this year because it's gotten too hot." They added, "Summer came early, and strange things started appearing in the sea. There are even shapeshifters living there." Haruki, still curious, asked, "Does that mean there are no jellyfish, honestly?" When they reached the swimming pool, the students confirmed, "This is it, right?" One of them exclaimed, "Here it is." As soon as they saw the pool, they were shocked, saying, "What is this mess? This isn't a pool." Another student remarked, "This doesn't just need cleaning, it needs to be blown up." Haruki inspected the water and said, "No, the water here is just really dirty. It's stagnant." He added, "It's not polluted, but there are unnatural things in it." Suddenly, a student named Higeta shouted, "I'll start cleaning from over there." Higeta slipped and fell into the pool, starting to disappear. Panicking, his friends screamed, "Help him! He's drowning!" Another added, "It's over. He's probably already poisoned." But Sanko calmly explained, "No, it's just mud. He'll dissolve in the water." Moments later, Higeta resurfaced, gasping, "That was a terrible experience." The short student sighed in relief. "Thank goodness you're okay." But they noticed that Higeta looked different and was acting strangely. He exclaimed, "Oh my god, I almost died. It's a miracle I'm still alive." Everyone observed him in disbelief, questioning, "What happened to him?" Sanko frowned and remarked, "What's this nonsense? He turned blonde in such a weird way." One of his classmates pushed Higeta back into the pool, saying, "Let's just say he died, and that he was poisoned by the toxic water." Haruki sighed. "All right, now we really have to clean this pool." While he was speaking, the short student began stirring the water with a stick, and suddenly a small creature emerged from the pool. It tried to grab him, whispering, "Come! Come!" They rushed to save Higeta from the creature's grasp, but it was strong. At that moment, Sanko intervened and struck the creatures, forcing them back into the water with a single blow. He helped his friend, asking, "Are you okay, mommy?" Higeta, overwhelmed with gratitude, hugged Sanko. Just then, a monster emerged from the swimming pool and sneered, "Do you think you've defeated us, you pack of dogs?" Sanko confidently retorted, "Who are you mocking? Just remember, you already got beaten up." The monster replied, "Sorry, but we were just trying to protect our boss, who's still here." Suddenly, the water began to stir ominously, and a giant fish with a human-like face emerged, carrying the same monster that had dragged Mommy into the water earlier. The massive fish began to speak. "How are you, shapeshifters? You're worthless. I am the biggest among you, and you won't succeed in cleaning this pool. This place is sacred to us, and we won't let you lay a hand on anything here." One of the shapeshifters transformed into a cat and taunted the fish. "All right, come here, so I can show you what this cat can do to you. Your words aren't enough." The cat leaped at the fish, but being so small, it was swallowed whole. Everyone shouted in horror, "No! Tomo! The fish swallowed Tomo!" The fish sneered, "Don't worry, I'll fit everyone inside my stomach." It then launched an attack on them. Haruki, panicking, shouted, "What are we going to do now?" Sanko, keeping his cool, answered, "She's hungry, right?" Standing in front of the fish, Sanko raised one hand and instructed the tall boy, "Hold it!" The tall boy transformed into a stronger form and managed to grab hold of the giant fish. Suddenly the fish cried out, "What is this? I'm in trouble." The fish, in distress, turned to the other smaller fish and said, "I won't be able to do anything like this. We're in a mess." The smaller fish added, "All right, just look." The giant fish, feeling cornered, said, "Do whatever you want. If you want to eat or torture us, go ahead." The tall boy retorted, "I don't think I'd like your taste." As the short boy climbed toward the fish, he suggested, "Why don't you go live in an aquarium? You'll get your 3 meals a day, sleep, and wake up whenever you want, and no one will bother you. You might even find another fish like you to marry." The smaller fish echoed, "You all can come with me too." The giant fish, appearing a bit melancholic, took a moment before agreeing. "All right, I agree." Haruki blurted out, "No, you have no personality at all." With the situation somewhat resolved, Haruki turned to the students. "Okay, let's start cleaning the pool." He noticed the tall boy still standing in the water and asked, "Why have you been standing in the pool for so long? Are you okay, or do you feel something?" The tall boy replied, "No, I'm fine." But then he added, "But the water is really hot." As he spoke, he lost his footing and slipped, causing a huge mess in the pool. Meanwhile, the teacher returned to the principal, carrying a small kiddie pool, and asked, "What do you think of this? It's nicer than the big pool." The principal retorted, "No, of course not, you fool. I'll have to deduct that from my salary." Feeling disheartened, Haruki sighed. "So, we won't see any swimming for a whole year." In the end, they decided to take the large fish to its new home, giving it a chance at a happier life. Haruki was sitting with Manu at school, where Manu informed him that he would have Haruki attend his yoga classes. This would allow Haruki to gain significant experience in this field and get to know the students better. Haruki was impressed and asked, "Can I join you?" Manu replied, "I'll inform the principal and pressure him to agree, so you can also become a better teacher than before." Haruki responded eagerly, "Yes, I want to be a better teacher than before." Then the bell rang. Meanwhile, other teachers approached Manu and said, "How can you talk to him like that? The principal is angry because of the power he has." They asked Manu, "Aren't you afraid of him?" Manu replied, "No, why should I be afraid? I know he has power, but I actually want to control him." Later, Haruki attended Manu's class, and Manu announced to the students that Haruki would be joining them. The students felt uneasy, wondering what it would be like to have him in their class. Haruki addressed them, "Bear with me, I'm still a new student." Manu began the class by saying, "I want you all to submit last week's homework." One student named Mangini turned to his classmate Nudo and whispered, "Did we?" They had an assignment from the previous week, and suddenly Nudo told the teacher that Mangini hadn't done his homework. Manu intervened. It doesn't matter. He'll do it here after school. Mangini felt deeply hurt by both his teacher and his classmates' words. In the row behind them, another student, Higita, he raised his hand and informed the teacher that he had done his homework but had forgotten to bring it. The teacher replied, "Fine. Go get it. Your house is only about 15 minutes away from the school." Higita left the classroom feeling frustrated, thinking he looked like a liar even though he hadn't done the homework either. Manu began a new lesson, explaining about yokai individuals in the present day and how they try to live among humans normally. Haruki was impressed by Manu's strict teaching style and noted that Manu didn't seem to joke around. He imagined himself pleading with one of the students while the entire school watched. Manu continued his lesson, explaining that each yokai transforms into something specific and possesses unique powers. Haruki took notes, wondering aloud, "I wonder what Sano would transform into. He'd look funny if he turned into a small student like this." At that moment, Sano sensed Haruki's gaze, turned around, and hit him on the head with a pen, causing a small cut that bled. Manu continued with the lesson. Haruki raised his hand and asked, "Why are some types of yokai hard to deal with?" Manu replied, "Because they can't control their emotions or their anger, which leads to major problems." Then Manu added, "For example, I regain my strength when I drink alcohol, and I become very strong. Do you want to see that?" The students quickly gathered and said, "No. We don't want that. What happened last year was enough." Suddenly, Haruki spoke up. "I want to see it." All the students glared at him in anger and said, "Be quiet. You don't know anything." In that moment, Manu opened the bottle and took a drink, saying, "Now I'll show you what my power looks like." All the students were terrified. Manu then struck the board, shattering it along with the wall behind it. Manu then said, "Do you see now, troublemakers?" Meanwhile, Higita was looking for his printed homework sheet but couldn't find it. He muttered to himself, "I need to find time to finish it now," struggling with his internal dilemma. In the classroom, Manu continued drinking. Sano turned to Haruki and explained that Manu only knows how to use his power or yokai ability when he's drunk. He mentioned that last year, Manu broke half of the entire school before sobering up by the end of the day. Nudo added, "I knew this was going to happen the moment he walked in." Manu suddenly shouted, "Shut up!" and hit Nudo on the head with a cucumber, saying, "We're in the middle of a class." When he saw Nudo running, Manu chased him to the door and asked, "Where do you think you're going? We're not done with class. Do you want to leave?" Playing with an orange, he suddenly squeezed it into Nudo's eye, the only one he had. Meanwhile, Manu turned back to Haruki and said, "You too. Show us what you've got." Haruki responded, "Show you what? Do you want to know how much I earn?" Manu grabbed Haruki's shirt in anger and said, "Do you think I'm stupid? I'm telling you, show us the power you have." Just then, Sano came up from behind Manu and hit him, pushing him away from Haruki. Sano turned to Haruki and said, "You have to exorcise the evil spirit from him." Haruki, confused, asked, "How am I supposed to do that?" Sano replied, "You have the power, and you can do it." Haruki, still uncertain, said, "Really? I have all that?" He began to recall the moment when he opened the door. Sano asked, "You still don't know?" Haruki answered, "No, I didn't. I was just selling ordinary things and living my life." After Manu got up from the ground, Haruki said to him, "Get ready, Manu. I'm going to do this for Nudo and Kasam, the ones you hit." Both of them responded, "But you can't kill us." Suddenly, Mr. Hatanka entered the classroom and asked, "What's with all the noise?" He looked out the window and saw Haruki outside, having broken the glass in his attempt to leave. Hatanka turned to Manu and asked, "Did you drink again?" But Manu was focused on Haruki and went towards him, attempting to throw him off the building. Haruki glanced down, realizing how far the ground was, and thought to himself, "I don't have any power. What should I do now?" Sano then said to Haruki, "Do you know that if you manage to exorcise the evil spirit from Manu Zakashi, he'll throw off the pants under his school uniform?" Haruki imagined it and decided he really needed to do it. His power emerged, and he successfully exorcised the evil spirit possessing Manu. Suddenly, rain began to fall on them. Just then, Higita appeared and announced, "I told you I finished the homework," only to find everyone gathered around. Haruki looked down and asked, "What's going on?" At that moment, Haruki's power spread to everyone present, causing them to collapse. Sano turned to Haruki and remarked, "I didn't expect your power to cleanse the entire school." Haruki, surprised, replied, "I hope we can keep this a secret between us." Sano asked, "Why?" Haruki explained, "I don't want anyone in the class to be afraid of me. I want to have a good school year without harming anyone." Suddenly, the plant that Haruki had grown splattered mud on his face, saying, "You don't care about us at all. We need water." The plant then bit Haruki's leg, causing him to scream. Sano laughed at Haruki's predicament. Meanwhile, Higita was pleading with Nudo to give him the homework, but Nudo refused. Higita continued to beg, "This is the last time. I promise I won't ask you again." Nudo still refused and reminded him, "Do you know how many times you've said this is the last time? You've told me that 100 times. Higita persisted. "I'll do anything you want, whatever you ask of me." Nudo replied, "I don't like this stuff. That's Sano's area." Higita kept pressuring Nudo until he finally agreed to give him what he wanted. Just then, they saw Haruki standing behind them in a frightening manner. Terrified, Higita and Nudo ran away. Nudo asked Haruki, "What are you doing here now?" Haruki replied, "I've become responsible for monitoring and disciplining students. In other words, I'm now Mr. Hatanka's support and learning more about the students." At that moment, Sano and his short friend came running. Nudo pointed and said, "All right, Sano, you can enforce some rules on him since he's breaking the regulations with his yellow hair." Haruki approached Sano and said, "Wait, I'm now responsible for your discipline." He began inspecting Sano from every angle. Sano grabbed Haruki by the face and lifted him up, revealing that his hair was actually black, and then tossed Haruki aside. Sano continued speaking to Haruki and told him he couldn't change his hair color, asking, "Do I look bad?" Haruki replied, "No, of course not. It looks good on you." Just then, Mr. Hatanka appeared, furious, and demanded, "What are you saying?" He added, "You can't be a discipline teacher." Haruki apologized to Mr. Hatanka. As Zakashi approached from a distance, she asked, "Why are you all standing around like this?" Haruki replied, "You came early today." Zakashi responded, "I was playing." Zakashi hadn't slept, and when she arrived at school, she was still wearing pants underneath her school uniform. Haruki rushed towards her saying, "You can't keep wearing those pants like this." But Zakashi kicked him in the face as he reached her and said, "I've defeated all the monsters in the game, and you're the last one left." Nudo remarked, "You're right, Zakashi, but he's our teacher." Haruki, not backing down, said, "I won't let you. I'm going to cut those pants off." But before he could, a police officer who happened to be there took Zakashi with him. Meanwhile, Zakashi and Higita were carrying their games when Hatanka saw them and confiscated the games, leaving them feeling sad. While Higita and Zakashi walked through the school, they overheard the teachers agreeing to lock up the students' games in the safe for a week after the upcoming exams. Manu warned, "Be careful. There was a student who tried to steal them before, but he won't succeed this time." When they entered the classroom, they informed their classmates about what had happened. Two siblings appeared and said, "Hatanka took our games too." The four of them agreed to retrieve their games that night. They made their way to the safe where the games were kept, discussing their plan. The school looked eerie at night, and at one point, Higita tried to tell his friends that he saw a monster on top of the cabinet. They gathered around trying to strike the monster, only to discover it was Haruki hiding behind the cabinet, thinking they were intruders. Haruki tried to scare them, but it ended with him taking them to the room where their games were kept, saying, "All right, I'll return them to you, but just this once." However, Haruki had set up a trap, and the students fell into it. They intended to attack and escape, but Haruki came out victorious, locking them in a cage to nullify their powers. Just then, Hatanka entered and said, "Well done, watchdog. Haruki." Meanwhile, Sano and Miami were in their room, with Miami studying to improve her grades. At the same time, Haruki told the four students that it was time for their discipline, but suddenly the twins began to control their powers, and the cage could no longer contain them. In an instant, they broke free from the cage and all ran off. Manu shouted, "Let's catch them!" And everyone began to run, trying to escape from them, while Hatanka observed the situation. Manu said, "I'll make you drink now so we can catch them." The students hid behind a wooden cabinet, thinking they were safe. But Manu appeared and broke the cabinet from the other side, approaching them and saying, "Did you really think you could get away from me?" At that moment, one of the twins used their lightning power against Manu, but the lightning hit Haruki instead. Haruki started to burn and ran towards the alarm to put himself out. The other twin then decided to use wind to extinguish Haruki. They realized that their goal had been to retrieve their games, while the teachers thought they were there to steal the exam questions. Hatanka asked them, "Why didn't you just ask for the games? I would have given them to you." Haruki remarked, "Good thing the firefighters haven't arrived yet." Hatanka replied, "When the alarm goes off, they get called automatically." As he turned towards the window, he saw the students below. It became urgent for everyone to hide. While Sano and Nudo were walking, they saw everyone hiding. They called out to the firefighters, saying, "The ones who triggered the alarm are right here." And once again, everyone started running. The students were amazed to hear that a TV channel would be interviewing their teacher, Haruki. With some shyness, Haruki explained that he was invited for a personal interview because he was the first human teacher at Yoka School. Zakashi eagerly asked for the name of the channel, and Haruki replied that it was for a program called Biography. The students expressed their reservations, suggesting he might not be ready, and warning him that it might not go as well as he hoped. Sano bluntly told him he would likely embarrass himself, as he wasn't interested in much besides school uniforms and, according to Sano, was a complete coward who might even get fired over this. Haruki took Sano's harsh words to heart, doubting if he should accept the offer. However, the students rallied around him, offering their support to help him prepare so he wouldn't embarrass himself. Feeling their enthusiasm, Haruki's spirits lifted, and he grew more excited about the idea. Soon, their teacher Hatanka entered and reminded Haruki not to create any new holes in the walls during lessons. Later, Agiha, the show's director, arrived to greet him and introduce herself and her assistant, along with the rest of the crew. Haruki couldn't help but feel intimidated intimidated by her assistant's massive size. Agiha explained that once filming was complete, they would explore the school's activities. Haruki agreed without hesitation. The students were thrilled at the thought of being on TV, preparing themselves with enthusiasm as they anticipated being filmed as well. When Haruki entered the classroom, Agiha warmly greeted everyone, and Haruki began his lesson. As he opened his book, Haruki realized, with a jolt of panic, that he had grabbed his personal book on school uniforms instead of the actual textbook. Desperate to keep it hidden, he quickly decided to slip away, and once again, made a small hole in the wall to discreetly ask for the correct book from the next classroom. Teacher Hatanka noticed, questioning why Haruki was borrowing from another class. The first part of filming wrapped up, but it hadn't gone smoothly. Agiha then suggested they proceed to the second segment. Haruki agreed and invited Hatanka to assist in this next part. Hatanka instructed the students to focus on causing fear and panic, encouraging them to be as terrifying as possible. Haruki, determined, assured him he would put in his best effort. However, Hatanka clarified that Haruki wasn't a candidate for scaring people, and asked him to simply observe instead. Agiha was thoroughly amazed, remarking that she had never seen a teacher quite like Haruki, and that this would add a unique touch to her show. Haruki, still slightly flustered, asked Hatanka how they would reach the city, as it was a long distance away. He suggested traveling by sea, but Hatanka explained that would take around 10 hours, which was impossible. Instead, he revealed that the school principal had used his magic to create a room that, when opened, would instantly transport them to the city. Annoyed, Haruki wondered why no one had told him about this before. Hatanka replied slyly that it was likely because Haruki would have tried to escape on his first day. Haruki agreed, admitting he probably would have, and then asked the crew to cut this moment from the broadcast. Agiha reassured him, promising to edit out anything unnecessary. Hatanka announced to the students that today would be their practical training day, but with one specific instruction. No one was allowed to practice their scare tactics on Haruki, not because he was human. When Hatanka asked if anyone knew the reason why, the short student piped up saying, "Because he doesn't have any friends." Haruki snapped back angrily, denying the claim. Another student, Higeta, chimed in, calling Haruki foolish. Sakashi added that no one could even bear to look at him, and Sano speculated that Haruki's bad luck might rub off on others. Haruki protested, hurt by their words, but Otaga finally offered the correct answer, because he doesn't have anyone to warn him about what's going to happen to him. Hatanka praised Otaga, explaining that it was essential for people to look out for each other. He then gave strict instructions to avoid scaring children, the elderly, pregnant women, or anyone with health conditions. He selected Otaga and Nudo as the first pair to begin, though they looked uneasy. Trying to boost their confidence, Haruki cheered them on by attempting a scare demonstration, but it only made them more anxious, and they asked him to stop. Nudo and Otaga then proceeded to practice on two boys, successfully scaring them off. Pleased, Hatanka congratulated them and called for the next pair, Mangini and Higeta. They encountered an old woman, but she proved to be braver than expected. She threw salt in Higeta's eyes, claiming to be a spirit banisher, and chased them off with weapons, sending the two students fleeing in terror. When they returned to Hatanka, they reported that they had left her tied to a tree. Next, Exami and the short student attempted their scare training, but failed as well. Hatanka then announced that Sano would be up next, and instructed him to take Haruki along. Haruki eagerly accepted, thrilled to participate, while Sano was less than enthusiastic, questioning why Haruki had to accompany him. Hatanka replied mysteriously, explaining that Haruki would be there, just in case. As they set off, Haruki asked Sano why he never used Yoka magic. Sano admitted he didn't know how to control it, explaining that he needed genuine intent to activate it. He remembered an incident from middle school when he had trouble controlling his power. Haruki, excited, assured Sano he would support him and, if needed, could even use his own energy to enhance Sano's magic. Sano, unimpressed, told Haruki to focus on controlling his own energy before offering to help anyone else. During their exercise, Sano spotted a man with a dog and cut the leash, causing the dog to chase Haruki. As Haruki fled, he crashed into a bike, and the dog bit him, refusing to let go. He stumbled near a woman who, frightened by his appearance, screamed. Hatanka arrived to check on Haruki, asking if he was okay. Haruki, bruised and battered, sarcastically suggested that if Hatanka thought he looked fine, he might need new glasses. Sano proudly declared he had successfully completed the scare training, but Haruki retorted, "I'm the one who scared people, not you." Hatanka asked Sano to scare people without harming anyone. In response, Sano stripped the students in the hallway of their clothes to frighten them, claiming he hadn't hurt anyone. The students were outraged, shouting that he had wounded their pride and dignity. Agiha then approached Haruki, asking if they could begin filming his daily activities. Haruki requested that any unusable footage be removed. Meanwhile, the students secretly conspired to ensure he didn't come across well during the shoot. As Haruki started talking about his routine, the students interrupted, dressed in frightening costumes that made them look like bandits. Haruki, clearly annoyed, struggled to deal with their antics. They bombarded him with nonsensical questions, embarrassing him repeatedly. Frustrated, Haruki warned them not to behave this way, saying it was wrong. Sano advised him to be firmer, urging him not to speak politely to students who didn't deserve it. Taking Sano's advice, Haruki, in a stern tone, threatened that if they didn't obey his orders, they'd end up in a hell of their own making. The students, surprised by his change in tone, immediately apologized. Agiha, impressed, remarked on how Haruki's words had miraculously transformed the troublemaking students into well-behaved ones. She suggested they continue discussing the daily activities, but just then, the short student informed Haruki that one of the animals he cared for had gone missing. Worried, Haruki asked where it might have gone. Suddenly, he noticed the missing animal falling from a high place in the schoolyard. Without hesitation, Haruki leaped after it, risking his life. The students, along with Agiha's assistant, rushed to save both Haruki and the animal, narrowly averting a fatal accident. Grateful for the assistant's help, the students thanked him for saving their lives. Sano, shaken, turned to Haruki and said, "You're going to be the death of me." Haruki simply replied, "Thank you." The next day, Haruki watched the program and asked the students for their opinions, but their responses were less enthusiastic than he expected. Still, he confidently stated that the reviews had been excellent. Just then, he received a call from his mother. "Hello, Mom. It's been a while since we last spoke," he greeted her. His mother, with a knowing tone, replied, "I understand now why you asked for those charms to work at yoga school, but in exchange, I have a request for you." Haruki invited her to ask whatever she wanted, and she asked him to attend a festival at their home at the end of the week. Listening in on the call, the students quickly began planning a way to accompany Haruki to the festival. Hiroaki went to his mother's house as she had requested. While on his way, the students reached him, and Sano informed him that they were en route. Hiroaki urged them not to discover his identity or learn about his family. Sano agreed, suggesting that they visit tourist attractions first and then return. But Hiroaki should avoid any tourist spots to prevent being seen. Hiroaki expressed his appreciation to Sano, reminding him that he used to be different in the past, always reprimanding him. He then scolded Sano for joking around. Sano retorted with a threat, saying he would come over and skin his face if he didn't take back what he said. Hiroaki clarified that he was only joking. When the students arrived at the train station, Hijita urged Sano to move, but two young men were bothering Zakashi, insisting that she go with them. Zakashi refused, telling them to leave her alone. She called for Hijita to defend her, but he laughed, saying she was already in trouble with the boys. Zakashi grew angry, telling him to stop joking around and take action. Sano instructed Hijita to deal with the two boys. As he approached, another boy resembling Hiroaki appeared and defended Zakashi, also teasing the young men and suggesting they find someone else to bother. The students were taken aback by the resemblance, mistaking him for their teacher. A shorter student attacked the doppelganger, asking who he was. Hiroaki suddenly appeared, running towards Sano and hugging him, apologizing for what he had said during their previous conversation. He recognized the doppelganger as Kaman, who was also surprised to see him with the students. They all piled into a car to go home. Sano remarked to Hiroaki that he hadn't mentioned he had a twin brother. Hiroaki introduced Kamen to the others and informed them that he was his brother. The short student asked Kamen why he was looking at them like that, while Zakashi told him he had no right to speak to Kamen that way after having hit him. Hiroaki took Kamen and the students home, informing Sano that his mother knew everything, so there was no need to worry. He prepared the house for their visit. Suddenly, someone rushed out of the house towards Hiroaki, exclaiming that he was back and appearing very happy. Hiroaki playfully hit him, saying he was a ghost, and they shouldn't worry. A girl also emerged from the doorway and asked Hiroaki if his students were with him. Hiroaki approached her and requested a drink, then added that he hadn't informed his students that his home was a shrine and that this was a secret between them. The girl replied that of course they should come in and be welcomed. Sano then asked if they were going to leave the guy lying on the ground like that. The girl reassured him that he was also a ghost who had lived with them for a long time, so there was no need to worry. The man was surprised by her response and looked very confused. They entered the house, where drinks were offered by Hiroaki's mother. She expressed her happiness at seeing Hiroaki with people other than his brother. The short student asked Hiroaki's mother how he had been in the past. She reminisced about his childhood, recalling the first time Hiroaki walked when he accidentally grabbed women's beach clothes that had blown into him, causing him to walk towards them to retrieve them. Hijita remarked on how this was a funny memory, expressing his surprise. Hiroaki's father tried to enter but was stopped by his mother, who then asked the students about Hiroaki's behavior with them and if he was good at interacting with them. The students reminisced about the past and their interactions, assuring her that they were good together. Kamen entered and informed his mother about the program he was watching to distract her. Then he kicked the students out and told them to stay away from his brother, indicating they had a separate world from theirs. Hiroaki felt embarrassed, and told Kamen that he had no right to treat him that way. Kamen closed the door and pulled Hiroaki inside. Sano mentioned that he had bought Kamen some clothes as a gift, which he hadn't been able to give him. Hiroaki overheard this, opened the door again, and called for Kamen. Sano locked the door again. Hiroaki confronted Kamen, asking how he could act that way, asserting that he was only concerned for his brother. Kamen replied that he was just afraid for him, suggesting it was best for Hiroaki not to go to school with them. Meanwhile, Heijita entered through the door in a form of mud, speaking with Hiroaki, which caused Kamen to watch him in shock, fainting and falling to the ground. They took him inside to treat him, and Hiroaki's mother apologized for Kamen's behavior, explaining he was always protective of Hiroaki. Hiroaki reminisced that when they were children, Kamen would always worry about him and defend him, ensuring that no one could ever get close. But Hiroaki was feeling quite down. His mother asked the students for help with the upcoming festival, and they went to the venue filled with many stalls. Hiroaki pointed out that there were games like shooting, but the prizes weren't enticing enough to play. He began playing, aiming the weapon at the target and hitting it. The short student asked Sano if he had any other ideas to win the games. Sano suggested using Hiroaki as the target for their shooting practice. Hiejita assured Hiroaki not to worry, claiming he would throw mud at him so he wouldn't feel any pain. Zakashi, without Hiroaki's knowledge, aimed her shot at him and warned him to be careful. Meanwhile, Kamen sat with Hiroaki and Sano, asking if anyone wanted to eat. Kamen expressed his wish to order something. Then Sano asked for more than one item, surprising Kamen with his greed. Kamen lamented that if he had Hiroaki's power to drive away spirits, he would have gotten rid of them all. Sano inquired why Kamen didn't have such power like his brother. Kamen explained that Hiroaki's ability was inherited, while they hadn't inherited it from their parents, and it weakened from generation to generation. Sano mused that this was why none of his friends had experienced anything extraordinary at the festival, and asked about Hiroaki's strength. Kamen revealed that Hiroaki possessed great power, more than anyone else, due to an incident in the past, when a large door, which contained a yokai, Kamen's father had warned him not to go in. But after the warning, he accidentally pushed the shelves against the door, causing it to open and releasing the yokai, which always sought to take souls. Kamen had tried to flee, but the yokai trapped him. Just then, Hiroaki called out from behind the exit door, attracting the monster's attention, which led to Hiroaki's latent power surfacing and vanquishing it without his own knowledge. Kamen was amazed at Hiroaki's strength. When Hiroaki came in, he suggested watching television together, noting that Hiroaki had mastered both their mother's and father's languages, uniting them. Sano wondered why they didn't share this with Hiroaki. Kamen explained that Hiroaki was very strong, but couldn't control his power, necessitating a blue bead to help reduce and manage it. Kamen was unconcerned about anyone else but prioritized his brother's safety. He wanted to ensure Hiroaki didn't attend that school again. Sano assured Kamen that he would protect Hiroaki, adding that while Hiroaki's power was formidable, it wasn't necessarily beneficial against some of the yokai they encountered. He promised to manage any situation that might arise and protect Hiroaki. Kamen felt reassured and trusted Sano. Sano insisted that the trust should be placed in Hiroaki first, and if Kamen loved him, he should allow him to continue his duties and encourage him as well, recognizing that Hiroaki had dealt with many problems but had also solved them, proving to be a great teacher. Hiroaki overheard their conversation and felt overwhelmed with happiness. He rushed towards Sano to hug him, which resulted in both of them falling into the play pool. Hiroaki cried tears of joy, telling Sano that he would work hard to become a great and magnificent teacher. Sano scolded him but playfully restrained him in the pool, which was filled with water, zapping him with an electric shock. Afterward, they headed to the train station to return to school. Hiroaki's mother bid farewell to her son and his friends. Kamen approached Sano, asking him to take care of Hiroaki. As they were called for their train, they hurried to board. Kamen ran after them, trying to shout something, but the doors closed before he could reach them, preventing them from hearing his message. Hiroaki sensed Kamen was praising him, which made him feel even happier. Meanwhile, the train sped away, leaving Kamen unable to catch up and convey that they were heading in the wrong direction and not toward their city. The young student stood on a rapidly moving rock with a human face, speeding through the school grounds. Behind him, Haruki and two teachers ran after the rock. Haruki managed to grab hold of it but couldn't stop its momentum, resulting in a massive crash into one of the classrooms. Teacher Manu arrived, asking about the loud noise and what was going on. Observing the situation, he mentioned that while he couldn't discipline others, they shouldn't engage in such antics at school. Haruki, lying on his back, jokingly asked if he looked like he was in the best shape. Later, Haruki, Sano, and another teacher named Hora walked out together, with Hora expressing concerns about the upcoming sports day. Sano commented that it would be a very challenging day, doubting it would go smoothly. Haruki asked Hora what he thought the results might be, to which Hora humorously replied that he could imagine Haruki giving a lesson naked as a penalty. Sano agreed, declaring that would be a fitting punishment. The scene shifted to the schoolyard, where the principal announced the sports day, adding that the losing class would disappear. The students looked anxious until the principal clarified, saying the losing class's teacher wouldn't receive their salary. The teachers were shocked, and Haruki protested the decision. The principal replied that if Haruki objected, he'd have to teach for a full day without clothes. Embarrassed, Haruki reconsidered and asked the principal for mercy, feeling he had gotten himself into a tough spot. Manu reassured Haruki, telling him not to worry, and that he would only need to collect and review the papers. Haruki, realizing what needed to be done, declared he would lead the treasure hunt, starting with his own students. Manu asked who would be participating from his class, to which Haruki replied that he had Zakashi, the short student, and Higita, promising to give them his full support. The race kicked off with the short student from Haruki's class in the lead. Surprisingly, he transformed into a large, athletic figure, racing past everyone and grabbing the first paper. Returning to his usual form, he read it, transformed again, and dashed back to his friends, who scattered in surprise. Sano managed to catch him, and the short student explained that his paper read, "Best Friend," and for him, that was Sano. He handed the paper to Zakashi, who then took off for her leg of the race. Zakashi entered the field with fierce determination, competing against a fast runner from another class. Despite the challenge, she surged ahead, reaching the area with the next set of papers. She picked up a paper that read, "Sacred Sword of the Volcano." Instantly fired up, Zakashi transformed into a blazing flame, thrilling everyone as she darted toward a nearby volcano to retrieve the sword. Watching her, Haruki couldn't hide his concern, wondering aloud if she'd be safe. Meanwhile, Manu reminded Haruki to gather the papers from the participants. When Haruki asked the short student about his paper, he proudly repeated that it read, "Best Friend," which was why he'd chosen Sano. Manu praised him for his choice. The short student then asked if he could keep the paper as a keepsake, and Manu agreed, making the student beam with happiness as he thanked Manu over and over. Shortly afterward, another student approached Haruki, admitting he'd lost his paper and had thrown it away. It had somehow landed on the short student, who was annoyed by the idea of people tossing their trash his way. Deciding to be responsible, he kept it with him until he could dispose of it properly. Meanwhile, Higita was anxiously waiting for Zakashi to pass him the baton to continue the race. When she returned, holding the sacred sword, he asked, surprised, where she had gotten it. Zakashi casually mentioned it was her own, from home, and even joked it could be sold if needed. Urging him to run quickly, she warned that if they lost because of her sword, he'd be the first to pay for it. As Higita sprinted off, he couldn't shake the feeling that this sword wasn't ordinary. It was forged by demons. Zakashi then handed her paper to Haruki, while Higita reached the next checkpoint, feeling the pressure as he saw other racers struggling. Nervously, he opened his paper, fearing it might say, "Your secret love," but was stunned to find it actually read, "Your secret dislike in class." Higita froze, torn over how to handle such a potentially offensive prompt, as his friends urged him to keep moving. Not wanting to hurt anyone, Higita weighed his options. He briefly considered naming one of the girls, but feared they'd hold a grudge. He thought about Sano and the short student, but cared about them too much to choose them. He then considered Nudo and other classmates, only to dismiss each one. Finally, he thought of Zakashi, reasoning she was close to him and might understand his situation. Yet he worried she might tell his mother, which could lead to trouble at home. Noticing his struggle, the short student waved at him, holding up a scrap of paper. Higita ran over, pleading if he could take the paper instead. The short student, amused, handed it over, saying it was just trash. Overjoyed, Higita took the paper and asked where he could find Sano. The short student informed him that Sano was in the bathroom. Wasting no time, Higita sprinted to grab Sano, dragging him along in the race. Cheers erupted from the students and Haruki as Higita's burst of speed propelled their team into first place. The team celebrated their victory, and Haruki, overjoyed, gave Higita a big congratulatory hug, sharing in the triumph. After their victory, Sano, still feeling uneasy, asked Higita to check the paper and confirm if they had done the right thing. Higita encouraged him to go ahead and read it. When Sano opened the paper, everyone was stunned by its contents. Higita, expecting it to say "best friend," was shocked to see it actually read "secret crush." Trying to imitate the short student's nonchalant style, he ended up embarrassing Sano even further. Haruki quickly brushed it off, reminding everyone that the win was what mattered. But Sano, embarrassed and annoyed, landed a punch on Higita. Apologizing, Higita tried to reassure Sano, saying he shouldn't worry since he too had faced his share of embarrassment. Sano sighed and replied, "Higita, let's just stay friends," leaving Higita feeling both embarrassed and slightly irritated. The focus then shifted to the javelin throwing event. Haruki asked Manu if they were really expected to throw the javelins. Manu, amused, warned Haruki that if he kept rebelling, a javelin might just find its way to him. When the results were announced, Class 1 was declared the winner, bringing Haruki to the brink of tears. Manu, wiping his tears, reminded him that he had warned him about this outcome, to which Haruki replied that he should have been told even sooner. Two students from Haruki's class then approached with a strategic plan they'd crafted for the upcoming cavalry competition. They excitedly handed it to Haruki, asking for his feedback. As Haruki enthusiastically discussed the details with them, he noticed Manu trying to sneak a peek at the plan. Haruki quickly shielded the paper, reminding Manu that he wasn't part of their team. Manu laughed, teasing that it was easy to guess their strategies, but assured them he'd focus on his own team. Leaving a javelin hovering in his place, he went to meet Tahaki. Tahaki noted Manu's cheerful mood, to which Manu replied that sports day had indeed turned out to be quite entertaining. The students prepared for the next stage of challenges, with Haraki's second class stepping up. They eagerly implemented the strategy they'd shown Haraki earlier, advancing swiftly. However, in the rush, the short student toppled off Sano's shoulders, causing both to collide. The rest of Haraki's team became anxious, especially since they couldn't use Yoka magic, which impacted their morale. One team member even suggested retreating, but their leader reminded them of Haraki's words about not backing down and drawing the enemy in until the last moment. Motivated, they rallied and executed the strategy, successfully defeating the opposing team. However, as they celebrated, other teams began to surround them from all sides. Hijita quickly provided reinforcements with his earth magic, while Maeda used his speed to attempt an outflanking maneuver. Despite this, the rapid movement started to make Hijita feel dizzy. As their opponents closed in, the team coordinated effectively, using their magic and strategy to hold their ground. They fought skillfully, managing to keep the upper hand in a thrilling display of teamwork and resilience, impressing the onlookers with their tenacity and clever tactics. After Haraki's motivational speech bolstered the team's confidence, they were ready to secure victory in the competition. However, their plans unraveled unexpectedly. Maeda had instructed Hijita to throw mud balls at their opponents as part of the strategy, but Hijita, overwhelmed with nerves, froze under pressure. His face turned pale, and instead of following through, he suddenly vomited on those around him. This disastrous moment not only cost the team their battle, but left Hijita drained from dizziness and caused Maeda to collapse on the ground, unable to move. With their performance in shambles, the team was disqualified from the competition. Haraki, frustrated and visibly disappointed, shared his thoughts with Mano and Hataki as they discussed what had gone wrong. Hataki observed that only 2 teams remained in the competition, one led by Daider, known for their sluggish movements, and another by Koden, who had avoided direct combat throughout the event. Mano, stepping closer, noted that the competition was nearing its end and would conclude within minutes. Hataki, confident, joked that the third-year team would secure the final spot. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by the school director, who had overheard their remarks. The director informed them they were mistaken. There was still a third-year team in contention they hadn't accounted for. To their astonishment, Zakshi appeared, carrying an impressive collection of loot. Haraki and Hataki were stunned by her unexpected return. Haraki, relieved and amazed, muttered her name in disbelief. Hataki, still trying to process the moment, admitted he thought Zakshi had been eaten by Ota during the earlier chaos. Haraki explained that Zakshi possessed Yoka magic, allowing her to turn invisible. During Ota's rampage, Zakshi and her team had vanished from sight, while others were preoccupied with the battles. Using the distraction to her advantage, Zakshi had silently gathered treasures unnoticed. Proud of her efforts, Zakshi asked Haraki what he thought of her performance. Smiling, he praised her strategy and ingenuity. The school director, observing Zakshi's triumph, felt a sense of satisfaction. He reflected on how Zakshi had not only mastered her Yoka magic, but had also demonstrated exceptional teamwork. Congratulating himself for recognizing her potential, the director viewed Zakshi's success as a testament to her growth. When the standings were reviewed, Sano pointed out that their team had secured 3rd place in the night's race, thanks to Zakshi's extraordinary efforts. However, he reminded Haraki that the final race would determine the overall winner. Failing to perform well in the last challenge could drop their team to last place. Haraki, brimming with confidence, reassured everyone not to worry. Hataki approached him, asking if he had retrieved the item he was supposed to fetch from the gym. Realizing he had forgotten, Haraki panicked and dashed off to get it. Hataki instructed Sano to accompany him to ensure everything was handled smoothly. At the gym, Haraki apologized to Sano for the trouble he'd caused. Sano, maintaining his usual stern demeanor, told Haraki to finish his task quickly and come back down. Nervously, Haraki asked if Sano planned to hit him once he returned. Sano confirmed it bluntly, saying he wanted Haraki to come down so he could deliver the punishment. Horrified, Haraki pleaded that he didn't deserve to be hit. Sano reminded Haraki that they needed to focus on preparing for the final stage of the competition. Haraki tried to reassure him, emphasizing that Sano was their key player for the final round. However, Sano doubted his contributions so far, and admitted he didn't understand why Haraki continued to place trust in him. Haraki acknowledged that trusting Sano wasn't always easy, but maintained his confidence in him nonetheless. In an attempt to lighten the mood, Sano jokingly offered to sell Haraki a bowl for 500, claiming it would bring happiness. Haraki dismissed the idea, accusing Sano of trying to trick him with unethical sales tactics. He said he wouldn't pay such a price without testing the bowl first. Sano laughed and agreed, remarking that it was always wise to be cautious in trades. As they talked, a student passing by accidentally bumped into the ladder Haruki was standing on, causing him to lose his balance. As Haruki fell, he collided with a stack of wooden planks, which toppled over in a chain reaction. Sano quickly grabbed Haruki's leg to pull him away, but the sheer number of falling planks overwhelmed him, and Sano ended up trapped under the debris. Hatake arrived moments later, frustrated by the delay. Noticing the chaos and shaking ground, he rushed inside and saw Sano pinned under the planks, while Haruki stood frozen in fear and crying. Acting quickly, Hatake transformed his hand into a blade and began slicing through the wooden planks. He called for Haruki's help, but Haruki remained paralyzed. Hatake sternly reminded Haruki that this wasn't the time for tears. Spurred into action, Haruki snapped out of his fear and began lifting the planks, tossing them aside. With renewed determination, he carried Sano in his arms and ran straight to the first aid station. The doctor examined Sano and determined that he had a sprained ankle, which would heal within a week. However, he strictly advised Sano not to participate in the final round of the competition, though he was permitted to spectate. Sano, now sitting up, turned to Donito and cautioned him against doing anything reckless in the coming days. When the doctor asked about the nature of the final competition, Donito explained that it was an obstacle race involving a single yokai. Sano had been intended as their main participant. Hearing this, the doctor suggested performing a quick surgery to heal Sano immediately, holding up an injection to proceed. Before the doctor could act, Haruki intervened, saying he had another solution in mind. The final race began, and Tomao transformed into his cat form to take part in the event. The competitors were a mix of animals, including cats and mice, adding a chaotic dynamic to the race. Tomao sprinted forward with agility, reaching the first obstacle, a steep wooden climb. However, he quickly felt drowsy. The wood had been coated with a substance that induced sleepiness in cats. From the sidelines, Sano shouted a reminder to Tomao. He pointed out that the wood was made from the same planks that had injured his foot earlier. The reminder jolted Tomao awake. With sharp claws now extended, he shredded the wood into large pieces, clearing the obstacle before dashing ahead in the race. The competitors advanced to the next stage, where traps and temptations designed to distract them littered the course. Many fell victim to their instincts, unable to resist the lures. Tomao, however, stayed focused, racing through the field at full speed and avoiding the pitfalls. Successfully navigating the obstacles, he passed the sash to the next runner, a non-organic yokai, leaving the other competitors ensnared in their personal traps. The yokai runner moved skillfully through the course, dodging ground traps with precision. Upon reaching the wind barriers, he found himself alongside another competitor. The wind bearers attempted to slow them down, creating fierce gusts that disrupted their progress. Thinking quickly, the yokai used a small chemical explosive, akin to a bomb, to force the wind bearers to retreat. The explosion cleared the path, but cost him 1 point. Despite this setback, the yokai pressed on, enabling all competitors to move forward. Undeterred, he handed the sash to Haruki, who had stepped in to replace Sano. As Haruki began his sprint, his mind was clouded with guilt over Sano's injury, which he blamed on his carelessness. Determined to redeem himself, he pushed harder, overtaking several competitors and approaching the high jump box. However, this obstacle posed a significant challenge for Haruki as a human. Unlike the yokai competitors who had the natural ability to clear it with ease, from the sidelines, the team started to lose hope, believing the race was all but lost. Hijita asked what they could do since Haruki clearly wouldn't be able to make the jump. Sano, sitting nearby with his injured foot, revealed a risky solution. Haruki possessed latent yokai powers that could help him succeed, but using them was potentially dangerous. Despite their usual rivalry, Tomao volunteered to assist Haruki, recalling how Haruki had once helped him with schoolwork. Inspired, the rest of the team joined in to support Haruki, determined to see him succeed. Sano, however, stayed back, unable to participate due to his injury. As the team rallied around Haruki, the school principal appeared beside Sano, curious about the unfolding events. He asked Sano if he truly intended to let Haruki tap into his yokai powers. Sano admitted his uncertainty, suggesting they watch and see what Haruki would do. A few teachers gathered as well, intrigued by the spectacle. Haruki struggled at the high jump, mentally berating himself for his limitations but refusing to give up. Just as his resolve began to falter, his classmates appeared, wearing his favorite school uniforms, to cheer him on. Their attire, entirely inappropriate for a sports event, drew laughter and mockery from the crowd. However, their support reignited Haruki's determination. Drawing strength from their encouragement, Haruki sprinted forward and leaped with all his might. Against all odds, he touched the top of the high jump box with his hand before landing back on the ground. The crowd, including students, teachers, and the principal, fell silent in stunned disbelief. Fueled by his success, Haruki pressed on, clearing the remaining obstacles, swimming across a challenging pool, running across unstable stones, and leaping over blazing fire. His persistence closed the gap between himself and the lead runner. In a final surge of energy, Haruki overtook the leader and crossed the finish line, securing victory for his team. Overcome with joy, Haruki celebrated with his teammates, posing for photos and basking in the crowd's cheers. Just as the celebration reached its peak, Sano interrupted, delivering a punch to Haruki's face that left him bleeding. Stunned, Haruki demanded to know why he had been hit, but Sano offered no explanation. Before the tension could escalate, a shorter student ran up to Haruki, hugging him tightly and congratulating him for their first-place finish. As they celebrated, the other competitors were still making their way through the course. Sano acknowledged their first-place victory with a nod, but reminded Haruki that this competition was different from ordinary races. He emphasized the importance of reviewing the final results carefully to ensure their win was legitimate. Back at school, Haruki resumed his teaching duties, but under unusual circumstances. As punishment from the principal for his antics during the race, he was forced to wear an embarrassing and revealing outfit. Haruki lamented his fate, muttering, "So this is how it ends, reduced to wearing these clothes." Nudo wasted no time teasing him, calling him a complete pervert. Hijita joined in, adding that the principal must have gathered all the misfits into their class. Sano, unable to resist the banter, joked about how unfair Haruki's punishment seemed compared to another teacher, who had merely had a piece of cheese deducted from his salary for a similar infraction. Haruki defended himself, explaining that numerous parents had filed complaints about his behavior during the race. To avoid a salary deduction, he had reluctantly accepted the principal's creative punishment. Nudo, however, continued the teasing, commenting that Haruki looked more perverted than ever. Frustrated, Haruki pleaded with Nudo to stop calling him a pervert and instead refer to him as charming, but Nudo angrily refused. Hijita approached Haruki with a suggestion to celebrate their victory with drinks. Hesitant, Haruki asked if this meant he would have to foot the bill for everyone. Hijita confirmed, reminding him that it was customary for the teacher to treat their students on such occasions. As they left the classroom, Haruki sighed deeply, realizing that while he had avoided losing his salary to the principal, he was about to spend a significant portion of it on his students. Sano and the short student fell to the ground under the weight of numerous gifts received for Sano's birthday. Meanwhile, a girl named Momo observed Sano as he opened his gifts. After that, Haruki approached Momo from behind and asked what she was doing. Startled, Momo ran away in a hurry, prompting Haruki to comment that she made him feel like a threat. Suddenly, Haruki was drugged by an unknown individual, causing him to collapse on the ground. Later, in Haruki's classroom, a student named Exami arrived late, explaining to his classmates that he had rushed to make it before the lesson began. The short student teased Exami, asking if he had overslept. Exami denied it, claiming he had been rescuing a cat from thieves. Then, Haruki angrily entered, shouting at everyone to sit in their seats as the class was about to begin. Exami sarcastically asked if Haruki was in a bad mood that day. The short student asked what had brought Amaki to their class, leading Sano to grab Amaki by his tie and take him outside. Sano also called Hijita and Zakshi to join them. Outside, Sano questioned Amaki about traveling such a long distance to visit. The short student mocked Amaki, suggesting he was overly worried about his brother Haruki, which wasn't a good trait. Hijita asked Amaki about Haruki's whereabouts. Amaki revealed that he had locked Haruki in the restroom and left a school uniform with him. Meanwhile, in the restroom, Haruki struggled with his restraints, calling out for someone to help him escape. When he noticed the uniform beside him, he felt oddly happy as he liked the outfit. Sano dismissed any concerns about Haruki, confident he would be fine with the uniform. However, Sano scolded Amaki for never listening to him since their last meeting. After that, Amaki explained that he had come to check on Haruki's work and ensure he was fulfilling his duties properly. Amaki pleaded with the group to allow him to spend the day pretending to be Haruki, as he didn't know anyone else there. The group returned to the classroom with Amaki, introducing him to the other students as Haruki, who had supposedly lost his memory. One student jokingly commented that Amaki hadn't changed despite the fire incident. Nyoto added that Haruki's memory might have been affected, but his style remained intact. Sano mentioned that some aspects of Haruki's speech and behavior had changed due to the incident. Later, a student named Otaga apologized for her lateness, explaining that she had been rescuing a cat from thieves. Nyoto teased Exami, claiming the cat's rescue wasn't his doing. Exami admitted to fabricating the story, which annoyed Nyoto. Amaki urged Otaga to enter and accept her apology. As Otaga sat down, she transformed into a skeleton, shocking everyone. Nyoto commented on Otaga's transformation. Otaga explained it was due to the effort she had exerted while running, which caused Amaki to faint. as he wasn't used to dealing with yokai. Sano silently admitted his own discomfort with yokai as well. Amaki eventually recovered, explaining that he had fainted due to lingering effects of the incident and asked for the lesson to begin. A student dismissed the idea and suggested a plan to restore the teacher's memory. Fukachi quickly brought out a winter uniform that Haruki loved, hoping it would trigger his memories. However, it had the opposite effect, surprising the students with Haruki's unusual reaction. The students suggested that Haruki see a doctor. Afterward, Amaki went to the restroom with Sano, the short student, and Hijita. Hijita urged Amaki to better mimic his brother's behavior. Amaki admitted he had never liked any school uniform until now. At that moment, a yokai student named Nagita appeared, joking about their enjoyment of being in the restroom together. Hijita asked Nagita what he wanted and warned him not to mention any new concoctions. Nagita revealed that he had created a special potion for their teacher, which he claimed would restore Haruki's memory. The potion, he explained, had been crafted in the chemistry club using his unique method. Amaki expressed doubt, pointing out that Nagita wasn't even a chemistry specialist. Nagita confidently admitted he wasn't a chemistry expert, but claimed that with modern smartphones, yokai could access anything they needed. Nagita expressed his love for science and his determination to continue studying it. While he was talking, Sano snatched the potion from Nagita's hand and poured it over him, turning Nagita into a liquid puddle. Sano used tongs to pick up the puddle and threw it into the restroom. After that, Sano asked Amaki if he had started to get used to the yokai. Amaki replied that he was fine as long as the students maintained their human forms. Later, Koto fell down the stairs, prompting the short student to ask what happened. Koto explained that she had lost her balance and twisted her ankle. Amaki approached to carry her, but Koto, embarrassed and angry, scolded him for touching her and wrapped her arms around Sano's neck in frustration. Sano, annoyed, told Koto that he would take her to the clinic to ensure she was okay. He commented that the siblings had similarly foolish attitudes. Amaki carried Koto to the clinic, and she questioned his cold demeanor recently. Amaki didn't respond, silently lamenting that he was carrying a yokai and wondering what he had done to deserve it. Overwhelmed with fear, Amaki fainted, dropping both himself and Koto to the ground. Hijita sighed, noting that now there was another person to take to the clinic. Amaki woke up later and saw Sano standing before him. Sano explained that Amaki had fainted and he had brought him to the clinic. Other students, including Exami and Nyoto, expressed their concern for Amaki. Nyoto even brought a new potion, claiming it would restore memory, while the yokai twins presented photo books Amaki liked, hoping they would help. However, the teachers Hataki and Mano intervened, preventing the twins from using the books and promising to discipline them. They also checked on Amaki and admired the plants Haruki used to care for. Amaki, surprised by the affection people had for Haruki, told Sano he would leave and requested that what happened that day be kept secret from Haruki. Sano agreed and went over to Hijita, who teased Sano for being pleased that Amaki believed his earlier claims. Afterward, Sano went to the restroom and unlocked the door for Haruki. Overjoyed, Haruki leapt out, but in a less than dignified manner, prompting an angry Sano to strike him and tell him to stay away. Later, Haruki encountered Momo and apologized for scaring her earlier. Momo denied being frightened, but as a yokai, her secondary mouth at the back of her head rudely retorted to Haruki, calling him an idiot. This embarrassed Momo greatly. Haruki reassured her, saying it wasn't her fault, and asked if she had planned to give anyone a gift that day. Momo's second mouth rudely interrupted, but Haruki pieced together that Momo had prepared a gift for Sano to thank him for helping her during a competition when Hijita accidentally threw up on her. The second mouth sarcastically praised Haruki's intelligence, but mocked his overall uselessness. Haruki acknowledged that Sano's birthday was approaching and suggested it might be hard for Momo to give him the gift. Nagita then appeared, claiming to have overheard everything. He teased Momo about her situation, but offered a perfume he had crafted, promising it would make her feel more feminine. Nagita approached the group and sprayed his perfume on them. Haruki immediately commented that the scent reminded him of an angry fish with a human face. Nagita admitted he had forgotten to include the waste-removing ingredient in the perfume but defended himself, explaining that he couldn't smell because he lacked a nose. Frustrated, Haruki questioned why Nagita would even make perfumes if he couldn't smell them. Hijita and Nyoto soon arrived, noticing the strange scent in the air. Hijita approached Momo, held her hands, and told her she was beautiful, confessing his sudden affection for her. Momo's second mouth mocked Hijita, doubting he could seriously ask her out given his tendency to vomit. Undeterred, Hijita confessed his love, leaving Momo embarrassed. Nyoto tried to pull Hijita away, but other male students, enchanted by the perfume, began surrounding Momo and professing their love. Panicked, Momo, Nyoto, and Haruki fled the scene, trying to escape the chaos. Nyoto asked Haruki why everyone was chasing Momo, and Nagita revealed that the perfume he had sprayed on her was designed to attract all males, especially yokai, due to its unique composition. Nyoto asked why Haruki was unaffected, and Nagita explained that the perfume only influenced yokai because it was made with yokai-specific ingredients. The group reached the end of the hallway, realizing they had no way out. The crowd of enchanted students continued to close in. Haruki called out for Sano, hoping for help, but Sano was already on his way home from school. Later, Sano returned to school after hearing Haruki's desperate call. He kicked the approaching students, knocking them down. Nyoto quickly explained the situation, and Sano, unaffected by the perfume, became furious with Nagita. However, the students stood back up and resumed chasing Momo. Nyoto urged Sano to use his yokai powers. Sano attempted to use magic but accidentally worsened the situation, tearing the students' clothes and causing further embarrassment. Nagita suggested that Momo needed to wash off the perfume to break the spell, but without a nearby water source, the group felt hopeless. Haruki came up with a solution by summoning the plants he cared for. The plants delivered a large container filled with water, where a fish swam peacefully. Haruki instructed Sano to carry Momo and jump into the water to wash off the perfume. Sano carried Momo and leapt into the container. The water neutralized the perfume's effects, causing everyone to return to normal. However, the students were shocked to find themselves without clothes. Haruki checked on Sano, who confirmed he was fine. Sano then turned to Momo and asked if she was okay. Grateful, Momo thanked him for his help. Momo handed Sano a gift, explaining it was a handkerchief to replace the one he had given her during the sports festival. However, when Sano opened it, the gift turned out to be women's underwear. The students were stunned, and Exami loudly exclaimed that Sano had received such an unusual gift, causing an uproar. Embarrassed, Momo apologized, explaining that the handkerchief section was next to the underwear section, and she had made a mistake. Sano accepted her apology but refused the gift, assuring her he would handle the students who were making a scene. Momo felt relieved and happy, finding Sano's kindness endearing. Later, Sano, Hijita, the short student, and Zakshi went to the public bath since their dorm's water supply was unavailable. Zakshi mistakenly entered the women's bath, where her friend informed her that Momo had a question for her. Momo approached Zakshi and whispered something in her ear, but Zakshi repeated it aloud, making everyone hear. Momo's second mouth sarcastically commented that whispering was pointless with someone like Zakshi. Zakshi replied she didn't know anything about Sano's romantic life. Nearby, two yokai students remarked on Sano's good looks but criticized his childish personality. Zakshi then turned her teasing toward Otago, asking about her love life. She teased Otago about a boy from another class who had proposed to her. Flustered, Otago denied having feelings for him, insisting she was focused on her studies and future. Zakshi continued teasing, claiming everyone knew Otago liked Nyoto, shocking the group. Embarrassed, Otago covered Zakshi's mouth to stop her. Meanwhile, Koto reflected on the beauty of romance, recalling how Amaki had carried her after she fell, though she mistakenly believed it was Haruki. In the men's bath, Haruki made a loud, dramatic entrance, causing a commotion. Zakshi, unimpressed, remarked that Sano wouldn't tolerate such behavior and expressed her desire for a more daring man, making her friends feel awkward. In the men's bath, Hijita, sitting beside Haruki, noted his broad and tall stature, calling him a giant compared to himself. Nearby girls overheard the conversation, misunderstood it, and panicked, imagining something entirely different. The short student, feeling self-conscious, expressed envy of Haruki's height. Haruki reassured him, saying he was fine just as he was. In the women's bath, Zakshi stacked buckets to peek into the men's bath, curious about their activities. Momo tried to stop her, warning that she might see Sano naked. However, upon hearing that Sano wasn't particularly tall, Momo changed her mind and decided to help Zakshi, insisting she'd take a turn next. Otago, shocked, tried to stop them but accidentally transformed into her skeletal form in her flustered state, startling everyone. Amid the commotion, Otago also caught a glimpse of the boys. Nyoto noticed the chaos and questioned Otago about her behavior. Embarrassed, Otago claimed she had been startled by a mouse and accidentally transformed. She quickly returned to her normal form and splashed water on Zakshi and Momo, scolding them for their actions. Zakshi, slightly jealous, teased Otago, accusing her of seeing something. Otago denied it, but Momo's second mouth accused her of lying. Eventually, Otago admitted she had seen the boys, but downplayed it, comparing the scene to a zoo. Nyoto overheard Otago's remark and asked what she meant, prompting Zakshi to press her for more details. Otago dismissed the matter, saying she hadn't seen anything clearly and adding that her focus was on Nyoto. Zakshi teased her further before suggesting they leave the bath and find something fun to do. After leaving the baths, the girls ran into Nyoto, Haruki, and Sano. Upon seeing them, Haruki fled in embarrassment. Otago tried to apologize to Nyoto for the earlier incident, but Nyoto brushed it off as a misunderstanding and walked away. Meanwhile, the remaining boys confronted the girls, revealing they had overheard everything and wouldn't forgive them for their comments. They warned the girls not to compare or judge them again before leaving in frustration. Otago called out to them to explain and apologize, but no one listened. Momo, still upset, silently worried about Sano, feeling guilty about the situation. Hatake walked through the school corridor, feeling the exhaustion of the day weighing heavily on him. Suddenly, a black feather fell before him, unmistakably from a crow. He muttered to himself that it must be a sign of bad news. As he contemplated this, a voice called his name from behind. Turning around, Hatake saw the air filled with fluttering black feathers. Elsewhere, Haruki and Mano were watching the news. The report detailed a dangerous creature abducting animals, stripping them of their fur, and then returning them to their original locations. Some of these victims were being treated at Dr. Takahashi's clinic. Haruki expressed frustration, believing it to be the work of an evil yokai. Mano agreed, lamenting the corruption in their world. Haruki teased Mano, pointing out his habit of wasting time with women. Mano defensively retorted that he had never even been on a date, which Haruki admitted was true for him as well. Mano argued that his disinterest in women was intentional, and he urged Haruki to use his demon-banishing powers to protect him if the yokai approached. Haruki suggested that Mano ask Sano instead, as he was far more powerful. Sano soon appeared, cutting a lock of Haruki's hair, and jokingly remarking that every teacher needs a student to protect them. Haruki was visibly annoyed. Sano then asked if they had seen the short student he was searching for. Haruki replied that he hadn't. Mano pointed out that they should be in class with their teacher, Hatake, who would not tolerate tardiness. Other students arrived, mentioning that Hatake hadn't shown up yet, prompting concern. Just as the students began to wonder, another news update reported another kidnapping incident involving the same yokai, this time claiming 2 victims in broad daylight. Alarmed, Sano ran to a window, calling out for the short student. He opened the window and saw plants swaying below. The plants relayed to him that a yokai had placed the short student and Hatake into a cage and taken them away. Mano immediately urged the students to report the matter to the police. Meanwhile, Hatake and the short student awoke inside a cage, surrounded by others that held yokai who appeared powerless to escape. Hatake tried to rouse the student, who apologized for not paying attention in class. Hatake asked if they were still in school, but the student observed that this was unlikely, given their surroundings. Suddenly, black feathers rained down upon them again, and 3 figures emerged. Their leader introduced himself, saying they were the Karasawa team, a group of villains. The short student derisively commented that the name was awful. The leader, visibly hurt, lamented that he had spent 3 sleepless nights coming up with it. One of his companions remarked that they had warned him it wasn't a great name. A third member monitoring the security cameras interrupted, pointing out that 3 individuals from the school, Sano, Mano, and Haruki, were approaching their location. Furious, the leader exclaimed that they hadn't even had the chance to cut their hair yet. Outside the abandoned building, the plant informed Haruki, Sano, and Mano that this was the location of their captured companions. As they approached, Sano noted that the place looked like a typical hideout for villains. Haruki handed his plant companion to Sano and Mano, asking them to keep it safe while he ventured ahead. In response, Mano's plant companion perched on his head, irritating him to no end. Mano picked up the plant, frustrated, and scolded it for sitting on his head, calling it heavy. The plant protested, claiming it was very light and that Mano was holding it too tightly. Mano turned to Haruki to complain about the plant, but found that neither Haruki nor Sano was around. The plant smugly told Mano that they had already left, blaming Mano for delaying them. It even teased him by calling him a harasser, which enraged Mano further. He loudly denied having any inappropriate relationships with women, only to notice a group of women nearby who were staring at him in awe. Flustered and embarrassed, Mano asked aloud where all these women had come from. The plant taunted him again, questioning his ability to interact with women. Mano defensively claimed he was good at dealing with girls because he had 5 older sisters. Just as he finished explaining, the women approached him, and in a panic, he threw the plant aside and bolted, causing a commotion. Meanwhile, Sano heard the noise and assumed someone from their group had been captured. His own plant companion commented that they might have lost their way. Sano, however, confidently claimed they were on the right track and that it was the others who had strayed. Suddenly, multiple Harakis appeared and surrounded him, each one hugging him tightly. Sano realized this wasn't normal and accused the clones of being a product of Haraki's ability to replicate himself, concluding that Haraki wasn't entirely human. Elsewhere, the villainous leader of the Karasawa team was celebrating. He proudly announced that they had successfully captured the 2 strongest members and tricked them into their trap. Another member of the team prepared a sharp instrument, declaring that it was time to start cutting hair. Hataki questioned the purpose of cutting hair and asked what they did with it afterward. The villain smugly explained that they sold the hair at online auctions, where wealthy buyers paid handsomely for it. The short student expressed his disappointment, calling the act sad and degrading. When one of the villains approached to cut his hair, the student vehemently protested, scolding the villain and even pointing the blame at Hataki. This betrayal angered Hataki, who denied being at fault and accused the student of lying. The villain grabbed Hataki, deciding to start with him. Meanwhile, the Karasawa leader, monitoring the surveillance cameras, noticed Haraki wandering around and ordered his subordinates to get rid of him quickly. Haraki, lost and feeling disheartened, began to tear up. His plant companion reassured him, saying it had heard the others screaming and was certain they weren't safe. The plant pointed out a light coming from a distance, leading Haraki toward it. The light turned out to be a convenience store where 2 middle school boys were hanging out. Haraki froze, intimidated by their presence and fearing they might attack him. His plant companion, frustrated with Haraki's lack of courage, struck him on the head to snap him out of it. The plant encouraged him to be braver and reminded him that he was a teacher meant to guide and protect his students. Bolstered by these words, Haraki regained his confidence. Approaching the boys, Haraki firmly told them not to loiter around. The boys, annoyed by his interruption, asked if he was trying to pick a fight. Haraki denied this, but warned them about the presence of dangerous, venomous insects in the area. The boys dismissed his concerns, mocking him and scolding him for interfering. The boys were sitting in front of the store, blocking the way for people trying to shop. He angrily told them to move quickly, displaying his exorcist powers. When he used them, the boys transformed into tree trunks, along with the women who were with Mano and the clones with Sano. Haraki was stunned by the transformation of the boys into tree trunks. The plant companion commented that the boys must have been under a yokai spell, which turned them into something resembling their greatest fear. Then, from above, appeared one of the villains, the one with black feathers. He asked Haraki how he broke the powerful spell and questioned what kind of strength he possessed. The villain descended and demanded that Haraki reveal who he was. Haraki decided to lie because he thought the villain might recognize him. He claimed to be a chemical worker experimenting in the factory, saying there was a leak he needed to fix immediately. The feathered villain laughed and told him that the building was not a chemical factory but a candy warehouse. Realizing his lie had been discovered, Haraki bowed and apologized with his plant companion. The feathered villain admitted he had been lying as well and asked if Haraki was a teacher at the yokai school. Haraki insisted on his right to remain silent, refusing to answer. The villain approached him, and Haraki warned him not to come closer, admitting he wouldn't be able to defend himself if attacked. The villain grabbed Haraki and lifted him into the air. However, the leader of the villains quickly intervened, telling the feathered one to put him down, revealing that he knew who Haraki was. The leader approached Haraki and confirmed that he indeed recognized him, expressing surprise at meeting him there. He commented that Haraki's powers, particularly his exorcist spirit, were still incredibly strong. Meanwhile, the third villain was searching for something and wondering where it could be. From behind a crate, 3 animals emerged, whispering that they had escaped from the villain before he could cut their hair. They credited teacher Hataki, who had cut through the cage to help them escape. Hataki assured them that he could cut through anything. Ikasami expressed relief, but pointed out that many animals had already fled before them, leaving them behind. He added that if they were caught again, the villains might not just cut their hair, but might also cook and eat them. Ikasami cried out that he didn't want to be cooked because he was still young and had so much to achieve in life. Hataki reassured him, promising to help him realize his dreams. Ikasami shared his dream of building a beautiful family, consisting of a husband, wife, a son, a daughter, and a well-behaved cat. Both the short student and Hataki were shocked by his statement, especially when Ikasami added that he wouldn't mind living as the family's obedient cat as long as they fed him. Hataki laughed, telling him that he already behaved like an obedient cat. The short student asked Eksami if he had told Nudo about this. Eksami mentioned that he wouldn't tell Nudo about his plans yet, deciding to share the news only once Nudo found a partner. Hataki joked that Eksami was far from straightforward. Then Eksami asked the short student if he would live with Sano once he got married. The student confidently replied that Sano would never marry because he didn't love anyone other than him. This odd statement caught Hataki's attention, who found it strange. While they were talking, the villain who had been searching for them appeared and grabbed the short student. The villain declared that he had finally found them, causing fear to rise in both of them. The short student quickly called out for Sano, prompting the villain to ask who Sano was. The short student described Sano as his wonderful friend, and before he could finish his words, Sano appeared behind the villain, striking him and forcing him to release the short student. Shortly after, Mano arrived and expressed relief that they were okay. The short student ran to Sano, hugging him tightly and admitting how scared he had been. The villain regained consciousness and angrily declared that he wouldn't be defeated so easily. He threw a stone at them, using his powers to enlarge it into a massive boulder, and started chasing Sano, Mano, and the others. Sano was bewildered by the transformation, wondering what kind of magic could accomplish such a feat. Another villain, the Winged One, appeared and offered them a deal. If they wanted to live, they should surrender their friends. Sano firmly refused and continued to run. Mano, feeling desperate, joked that he might just hand them over to save himself. Eksami retorted that if Mano were in their place, he'd do the same and would probably have his fur shaved off. Eksami then mocked Mano, calling him nothing more than a drunkard who liked to strip and had a single horn on his head. Mano was enraged by this comment, claiming he was the Great Mano. To prove his strength, he managed to stop the large boulder in its tracks, boasting that if Saki were there, he would have destroyed it instantly. Eksami joked that if Mano were drunk, he'd likely destroy the boulder while running away in fear. The winged villain reappeared, challenging Mano by summoning even more boulders and hurling them at him. Mano found himself struggling to fend off the onslaught. Meanwhile, Haruki was with the villain leader, and the winged rider. The leader questioned if Haruki was the grandson of Khan. Haruki confirmed this, which delighted the villain leader. He attempted to persuade Haruki to join their side, use his powers for evil, abandon the school, and leave the principal behind. Suddenly, the school principal appeared and interrupted the conversation. The villain leader mockingly said that the principal shouldn't speak his name if he wasn't present. However, the principal made it clear that he was indeed there. Overjoyed, Haruki ran to hug the principal, admitting how scared he had been. The principal, however, kicked him away, focusing instead on the villain leader. The principal confronted the villain leader, demanding that he leave the school's teachers alone and stop exploiting them. The villain leader refused and taunted the principal, asking why he didn't simply expel the teachers instead. The principal, maintaining his composure, questioned how long the villain leader would continue his petty crimes, emphasizing that it was time for him to stop. The villain leader declared that he wouldn't stop and insisted that this was the life he wanted to live. He also added that the principal had no right to lecture him because, in many ways, they were alike. The villain kept a close watch on Sano and Mano, confronting them in a place with no apparent escape. He taunted Sano, asking if he would surrender or face the same fate as Mano when the massive stones were thrown at him. Sano, resolute, refused to give up. Preparing to use his magic, he recalled Haruki's words and cleverly employed his spells to destroy the area supporting the stones. This caused the rocks to fall from above, trapping Haruki, the principal, and two of the villains beneath the rubble. The third villain, seeing this, panicked and rushed to free his companions from the debris. He urged them to flee immediately, insisting that staying any longer was too dangerous. Haruki, however, insisted they capture the villains before they could escape. Despite their attempt to flee, the villains stumbled into a muddy quagmire. Two of them suggested abandoning their comrade to save themselves, but the third villain grabbed them. Suddenly, Higita arrived with the rest of the students, declaring that the authorities were on their way to arrest the villains. In a last-ditch effort, one of the villains used a spell, flinging mud everywhere and disappearing into the chaos, leaving no trace of their presence. The villains fled into hiding, remarking that their pursuers were more dangerous than they could ever be. Back at school, Haruki, Eksami, and the short student regrouped. Eksami was upset while reading the newspapers, which credited others with helping free the captured animals. Haruki tried to console him, emphasizing that the most important thing was that everyone was safe and the villains were apprehended. Eksami then admitted to having stolen a wallet from one of the villains the previous night and handed it to Haruki. Haruki disapproved, pointing out that they shouldn't stoop to thievery, especially since the villains weren't common thieves themselves. He set the wallet aside. Later, one of the villains, now in disguise, approached Haruki. The villain asked about the wallet and demanded Haruki meet him that night to exchange it. The villain claimed he had also taken Haruki's wallet, holding it as leverage. However, when he discovered Haruki's wallet contained far less money than the one Ikasami had stolen, he angrily threw Haruki's wallet back at him, frustrated at its lack of value. Haruki mentioned that the day was planned as camping day on the beach. However, teacher Hatake arrived and approached Haruki and Manawa, criticizing them for wasting time. He reminded them of the upcoming ghost science tests the students needed to prepare for. Haruki questioned whether the day wasn't supposed to be for camping alone. Hatake then led the teachers and students to an old, abandoned school, explaining that it would serve as their training ground. He told them they would learn to identify and utilize their own energy in various situations. He also informed them they would spend the day and night there until the next morning. The students split into groups and began exploring the eerie building. Haruki speculated that their group might encounter yokai. Nyudo, however, reminded Haruki that they were yokai themselves. In another group, Nyudo observed that the building was surprisingly clean, considering it was abandoned. A boy with green hair theorized that another school must have used the facility recently. A member of a third group mentioned that a previous class had stayed overnight and experienced a strange sense of depression, shocking the others. The students laid their bedding on the classroom floor. Nyudo wondered aloud if they were really going to sleep in a classroom, while Haruki found the idea thrilling. Hatake explained that the only restroom was at the end of the corridor on the opposite side of the building. A female student joked about having their own private bathroom. Higeta, however, warned against anyone spying on them, which upset the girls, who denied such behavior and called him foolish. Before bed, Haruki suggested they chat for a while, but Sano questioned his eagerness to socialize. Haruki asked if anyone in the group had a girlfriend, but his question was met with silence. Higeta optimistically declared they would all date girls that summer, but the group replied unenthusiastically. Hatake interrupted Haruki, reprimanding him for inappropriate discussions with the students. He stepped on Haruki's neck and carried him out of the room, commanding the others to sleep. When no one obeyed, he warned that teacher Mano, who never sleeps, would give a goodnight kiss to anyone still awake. The warning worked, and everyone quickly went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Akasami woke up and asked Nyudo to accompany him to the restroom. Akasami's fear was evident as they walked. Nyudo teased him, wondering how a yokai could be afraid of ghosts. Akasami clarified that ghosts were the spirits of the dead, unlike yokai. Nyudo reassured him, saying yokai only frightened humans and had nothing to fear themselves. While walking, they encountered a girl with multiple arms blocking their way. She asked why they were walking around at night while holding on to each other. Nyudo replied by questioning why she, Ringo, was alone at such an hour. Ringo explained that her friend Kaneko had gone to the restroom an hour earlier and hadn't returned, which made her concerned. Nyudo suggested they search for Kaneko in the restroom. Upon arriving, Nyudo stayed outside while Akasami called out repeatedly, seeking reassurance. Soon after, Nyudo overheard Ringo talking to someone inside. He called out to Akasami, but there was no reply. Frustrated, Nyudo warned that he was coming in and that Akasami had only himself to blame. Inside, Nyudo began searching for Akasami. He was startled by the sound of running water and saw bloody handprints smeared on the walls. Suddenly, a pair of hands reached out from behind him. Akasami emerged from the bathroom, remarking on how unique and intriguing the place was. He went to wash up, completely unaware of an ominous spirit lurking behind him. As he called out to Nyudo, there was no response. Soon after, he heard footsteps approaching. Turning around, he was horrified to see numerous feet advancing toward him, filling him with dread. Later, in the teacher's room, Akasami startled Haruki by suddenly appearing from under his bed in the darkness. Haruki, shaken, demanded to know why Akasami was there at such a late hour. Akasami recounted the strange and terrifying events he had experienced. Shortly after, other students arrived, reporting that more classmates had gone missing. Haruki was shocked to learn that 10 students from his class, including Nyudo, were missing. Just then, teacher Hatake spoke through a microphone, joined by the other 2 teachers. Hatake informed the students that the situation they were experiencing was part of the yokai tests he had mentioned earlier. He revealed that several yokai graduates were inside the building, their task being to scare and capture the students. Akasami asked Hatake what they were supposed to do now. Hatake explained that one of the yokai had the key to the building's main door. To escape, they would need to find this key. Haruki asked what his role would be in this challenge. Hatake admitted that Haruki had no specific role but suggested he stay with the students to motivate them, as they were his class. Higeta voiced his frustration, stating that Haruki's presence would only hinder them. A green-haired student argued that Haruki, being a teacher, should stay with the other teachers. Irritated, Hatake shouted through the microphone, silencing everyone with his booming voice. A bespectacled student hesitantly asked what would happen if all the students were captured and they failed to find the key. Hatake replied that in such a scenario, they would spend half of their summer vacation teaching yokai. This idea horrified the students, who protested in unison. Hatake reminded them that their only way out was to succeed in the test, and announced that the challenge had officially begun. They had to find the key before dawn. The students, along with Haruki, split into 4 groups: paper, scissors, rock, and heart. Haruki was placed with the heart group, which stood in the hallway. Sano questioned a student named Fujo about his habit of dressing like girls. Fujo admitted that he enjoyed imitating the opposite gender. While they spoke, a girl suddenly descended from above, startling them by asking if they had time to talk. The group panicked, but Fujo calmly confronted her, using a freezing spell to immobilize her. He confidently declared that she would remain frozen until morning. Meanwhile, the first group was overwhelmed with fear as they were chased by a skeleton, an anatomical figure, and a neon entity. Feeling as if they were in a desperate race, they fled into the nurse's office. There, they encountered the school doctor, who greeted them warmly. He explained that he had been present at the school for a long time and that numerous yokai inhabited the building, himself included. He mentioned that he had graduated 100 years ago. The doctor then asked if the students had ever heard of a yokai called Yamamba. At that moment, 3 female nurses appeared behind the students, smiling eerily. The nurses soon revealed their true forms, transforming their faces and confessing that they consumed humans for being deliciously terrifying. They informed the students that escape was impossible and declared that a full medical examination was necessary. Without warning, the nurses launched an attack on the students inside the room. The second group overheard that the first group had failed the test, reducing their chances of finding the key. A short student panicked, exclaiming that they too would be caught if they didn't hurry. The white yokai reassured them, confidently stating that no harm would come to them as he had a special potion capable of destroying anyone who approached. However, before he could prove his claim, he was struck by a mysterious band, splitting him into 2 identical versions of himself. The sudden duplication confused everyone. Both white yokai began arguing, each accusing the other of being an imposter. The students restrained both to prevent further chaos. The short student suggested launching them both into space, but one yokai protested, insisting he was the real one. The other claimed that the group was jealous of his abilities and wanted to get rid of him. The group debated who the genuine yokai was. A green monster pointed out that the real white yokai wouldn't show despair, unlike the duplicate. The short student agreed, adding that the real yokai wouldn't apologize or express doubt, labeling the duplicate as a filthy imposter. Trusting their instincts, the students released the real yokai. The freed white yokai then revealed a special explosive potion he had created. He threatened to use it, terrifying everyone. True to his word, he threw the potion, causing a massive explosion. Despite their efforts, the group failed to confirm if they had chosen the right yokai. Meanwhile, the third group stood outside the broadcast room, attempting to enter. A student turned around and noticed something strange, urging Higeta to look as well. Higeta spotted a group of flying yokai, identifying them as the 100 Demons. Before the group could react, the yokai noticed them and entered through the windows, forcing the students to flee. As they ran, they encountered a train-like vehicle filled with skeletons. The train captured all the students except Higeta and disappeared into the distance. Determined to rescue his friends and find the key, Higeta vowed to keep searching. The fourth group discovered that the other teams had been captured, leaving only them and Higeta. Haruki remarked that everyone except Higeta had been taken. Sano expressed concern for the short student, Miyame, who was also among the captured. Akasami, filled with rage, transformed into his cat form, unsheathing his claws, and vowed to confront the yokai graduates. However, when Nudo appeared before him, Akasami froze in fear and reverted to his normal form. Haruki asked Nudo if he was safe. Nudo confirmed he was unharmed, but admitted to encountering a yokai, which had forced him to hide in an empty classroom. Akasami scolded him for ignoring earlier calls for help. Nudo apologized, explaining he was being pursued by a ghostly yokai. He then asked if they had found the key. Haruki admitted they hadn't and wondered if teacher Hatake might have it. Nudo doubted this idea. Haruki privately confided in Sano that Nudo seemed strange and different. Overhearing this, Nyudo questioned what they were discussing. Haruki quickly changed the subject to avoid further suspicion. Suddenly, the rat teacher appeared holding the key. Everyone was shocked. Haruki asked if it was truly the key to the exit gate. The rat teacher confirmed this but added that he wanted to play with them to lose some weight. With that, he fled, forcing the group to chase after him. Akasami transformed into his cat form, claws ready, and began chasing the rat teacher to retrieve the key. Despite his relentless efforts, he grew exhausted and slowed down. Fujo then arrived and cast a freezing spell, immobilizing the rat teacher. Akasami seized the key, but Sano noticed something strange and asked why the key was bent. Fujo confronted the rat teacher, demanding to know the truth about the key. The rat teacher revealed it wasn't a key at all, but a piece of candy meant for his dinner. Infuriated, Fujo hurled the rat teacher into the air with such force that he broke through the ceiling. This unexpected act exposed teachers Hatake and Mono, who were stunned by the chaos. Haruki explained to the teachers that they had found nothing useful on the current floor and suggested moving to the first floor. He also mentioned that Higeta was still on the third floor. As they descended the stairs, Haruki noticed bloody handprints smeared on the walls. He called out to Sano and urged him to look around. Sano, unsure of what was happening, was suddenly surrounded by ghostly hands and heard a girl's voice calling his name. Turning to look, he froze in fear. In contrast, Haruki, intrigued by the girl's attire and hair, approached her without hesitation, seemingly captivated by her appearance. The students and teachers monitoring the scene through surveillance cameras were shocked by Haruki's reckless behavior. Nyudo quickly intervened, pulling Haruki away and reminding him that interacting with a ghost was highly inappropriate. They all fled, but the yokai managed to capture Akasami. Haruki attempted to save him, but Nyudo held him back, warning him not to get caught as well. Fujo stepped forward, froze the yokai with his spell, and instructed Akasami to run. Akasami remarked on Fujo's sharp tongue, but acknowledged his bravery and strength. Suddenly, a green yokai appeared above Fujo and restrained him. Fujo urged Akasami to escape, but Akasami refused, declaring he wouldn't abandon him. Before they could react, a train filled with skeletons came barreling toward them. Just as it seemed the situation was hopeless, the train sank into the mud. Haruki shouted that it must have been Higeta, who then emerged and defeated the skeletons by trapping them in the mud. Higeta asked if they had found the key. Haruki replied that they hadn't, but stressed that it wasn't the right time to search because more yokai were closing in. Higeta instructed the group to search other areas for the key, while he stayed behind to handle the approaching yokai. Fujo volunteered to assist Higeta in the fight. Meanwhile, the remaining students rushed toward the building's entrance, convinced the key might be there. Sano, deep in thought, was approached by Nyudo, who asked what he was pondering. Sano explained that he was trying to piece together the clues they had. Akasami encouraged him, expressing confidence in Sano's ability to figure it out. Haruki, however, voiced his frustration over the lack of clear hints from the teachers, calling it an unnecessary burden. Sano dismissed Haruki's complaints, recalling Hatake's earlier statement about Haruki's role being to support the group. Reflecting on Haruki's words and actions, Sano began to connect the dots, realizing the significance of what had been said. Meanwhile, Fujo and Higeta continued their battle against the yokai. In the surveillance room, the teachers observed the remaining team. Hatake speculated that they would fail like the other groups, unable to find the key. Mono, however, urged him to wait before jumping to conclusions. The remaining students stood near the exit, their spirits low. Nyudo remarked that they were without a key, and with no yokai in sight, concluding this might be the end. Just then, Higeta and Fujo joined them, bringing a glimmer of hope. Refusing to give up, Sano grabbed Haruki's hand and directly asked if he had the key. To everyone's shock, Haruki smiled and revealed it. Without hesitation, he walked to the door and unlocked it just before sunrise, signaling their escape. Akasami, furious, confronted Haruki for keeping the key a secret. In his anger, he extended his claws and jabbed them into Haruki's arm. Haruki remained calm, explaining that he had been dropping hints the entire time. Nyudo asked Sano how he deduced that Haruki had the key. Sano explained he had paid attention to Haruki's words, particularly when Haruki mentioned his role was to support the group and suggested they search the first floor. Sano also noticed Haruki frequently checking his left pocket, seemingly ensuring he didn't lose something important. Nyudo commended Sano's sharp observation skills. However, Akasami suddenly turned to Nyudo and demanded, "Who are you? You're not Nyudo." The imposter smirked and asked how Akasami had figured it out. Akasami explained that the real Nyudo, his childhood friend, would never have abandoned him when he was captured. The imposter admitted defeat and revealed himself as a detective in disguise. Everyone was shocked as the detective explained that he was also a graduate of the school and had been masquerading as the white yokai. Haruki, visibly angered, accused the detective of lying and misleading them. The detective countered by teasing Haruki, asking if his reckless behavior around girls was typical. Haruki defensively stated he simply admired their uniforms. The detective joked about reserving a cell for Haruki in case of future misbehavior, causing Sano to laugh. Though momentarily cheered by Sano's reaction, Haruki felt disheartened when Sano dismissed his attempt to lighten the mood. The scene shifted to the failed students, now resting on their beds. Akasami checked on Nyudo, who slowly regained consciousness, and joked about whether Akasami had finally finished in the bathroom. Overwhelmed with relief, Akasami cried, happy that his real friend had returned. Sano also checked on the short student, ensuring he was all right. Hatake later approached Haruki, congratulating him on completing the challenge. As the yokai graduates exited the building, Haruki asked about the girl in the school uniform. Hatake responded that no such girl existed. Bewildered, Haruki insisted he had seen her and sought Sano's opinion. Sano revealed he hadn't seen anyone and claimed Haruki had been talking to a wall the entire time. Shocked, Haruki began to question whether he had truly been speaking to a wall. Akasami shared his unsettling experience in the bathroom, recalling the sound of approaching footsteps and wondering if it had been part of the test. He speculated it might have been a graduate, noting they hadn't attempted to capture him. Hatake jokingly replied, "Then you must be a ghost too." Haruki, deeply spooked by the remark, became terrified and begged Hatake to let them leave the building. Overcome with fear, he even requested to share a bed with Hatake that night, unable to sleep alone. The next day, Akisami was talking to the teacher and reassuring him because he looked tired. He told him he was indeed tired from visiting the student houses. Ringo's mother was going to eat him, and Maida's shark was going to eat him, and Oda's sister was also going to eat him. Then, he pulled out the list of visits for the day and was shocked when he saw it. He then asked Sano to come with him to visit the house of Maizuka, the short student. Sano was stunned by Haruko's request, but they went together. Maizuka's house was a huge mansion, which shocked them. However, Maizuka reassured them, saying, "Don't worry, we aren't a prestigious family." When they entered the house, they were greeted loudly by the guards. The biggest shock came when they learned that his family was part of a powerful alliance. Maizuka was puzzled by Sano and Haruko's reactions, but his siblings interrupted and asked if this was the perverted teacher Maizuka always talked about. Haruko and Sano were astonished by the number of siblings, and the short student explained that he had about 30 brothers and sisters and that he was the eldest. Then the siblings introduced themselves and welcomed Haruko and Sano, who responded to the greeting. One of the siblings, named Benz, spoke harshly to a servant, demanding him to prepare the house for the guests, which frightened the servant and puzzled Haruko and Sano with her boldness. The short student clarified that his sister Benz was the strongest candidate to lead the family because of her fierce and courageous nature. Then, Haruko and Sano entered the house amidst a tense atmosphere. The father asked Haruko how a human like him could be a teacher for his son, saying he didn't feel safe knowing that a human like him was responsible for his son. The short student interrupted his father and said not to compare Haruko to other humans because that would insult the other humans. Haruko pointed out to the short student that this was insulting him as well. After that, the father apologized to his son and pampered him, but his wife stopped him from indulging their son in front of guests. Then, the father told Haruko that he didn't feel comfortable with him and asked if he could help the students when they faced problems. He continued that he would test him to see if he was worthy of being his son's teacher. Haruko was shocked to hear this, and the short student told him he had forgotten to inform him that his father tested every teacher who came to the house to determine if they were worthy of being his children's teachers. Sano asked about the fate of the other teachers in previous years, and the short student told him that the only teacher who left the house safely was the one who had come last year. Haruko was puzzled and asked why she was the only one. Benz replied that she knew the reason and whispered it in Haruko's ear. After that, the father took out a spear and asked Haruko to show him his true strength and fight him. Haruko felt a surge of terror at what he saw and began to run away. The father chased him, trying to kill him, but Haruko dodged all his attacks while he was fleeing. Sano watched the situation and said that Haruko wouldn't be able to fight such a dangerous father. Haruko called for help from Sano, which provoked the father, who sarcastically replied that it was inappropriate for a teacher to ask his students for help. Haruko stopped running after he fell to the ground, and the father was about to finish him off. But with his last strength, Haruko invoke the power of the Demon Slayer, shocking Sano, who knew that if anyone found out Haruko possessed this power, they wouldn't allow him to work at the yokai school. However, Haruko had no choice. Then Haruko remembered his final strategy, stopped using his power, and told the father that he understood why the teacher from last year was the only one who left the house safely. This made the father tense, and we learned that Benz had informed him that the teacher had worked in a nightclub frequented by him. The father glared at Haruko and asked, "Are you threatening me?" Ignoring him, Haruko said he could call his wife right now. Although Haruko felt extreme fear, he decided to muster his courage and continue the conversation. The father dismissed Haruko and ignored him, but Haruko spoke loudly enough for the wife to hear. The father yelled at him, "You coward! What are you doing? Do you think I will respect you after this disgraceful act, you worthless little man?" Haruko replied, "It doesn't matter if I seem cowardly. The important thing is that I'm your children's teacher. Even if it means doing disgraceful things, I will do whatever it takes to earn your acknowledgement as their teacher." The father and the children were shocked by Haruko's words. Indeed, the father acknowledged Haruko as his son's teacher and warned him that if anything happened to his son, he would throw him into the sea to be eaten by fish. Then he said, "Take good care of my son." Haruko, along with the students, was overjoyed, while Benz was stunned by Haruko's courage that led to her father's acknowledgement of him as a teacher. Then the wife arrived and congratulated Haruko, asking her husband when he had been to that nightclub, shocking the husband. She then began hitting him, splattering blood on the wall. Afterward, the wife told Haruko, "I'm proud of you and happy that you made my husband acknowledge you without using magic or yokai methods. I am reassured that my children will be in your care." Then Benz remarked that she never expected Haruko to come out of the place alive. Haruko thanked her for helping him and for revealing the secret that saved him. Benz felt embarrassed and told Haruko that she had worked hard to earn her parents' trust, so she would give him a reward. Haruko replied that he didn't need any money, but she insisted that she wouldn't give him money. She asked him to come closer and kissed him, shocking everyone. Benz then told Haruko that she was willing to be his future wife. Just then, the father appeared again and objected to what had happened. He told Haruko that he needed to test him to prove his worthiness to be his daughter's husband and pulled out his spear again, causing Haruko to run away, wishing to end these home visits. The next day, after completing the home visits, Haruko went to meet the teachers in Kyoto, a beautiful city that delighted him. He was accompanied by one of the teachers, and Haruko noticed that they called each other by their first names, which surprised him. The disguised teacher, who appeared as a keychain, explained that they had been friends for a long time, so using first names was normal for them. Haruko was about to share his first name, but suddenly felt a strong urge to go to the bathroom. After that, one of the teachers recalled a memory from the past when they encountered Haruko by chance during a school trip. There was a child crying, and they asked him if he was lost. The child felt frightened of them and lay under a bench in the street, using yokai magic, which stunned the students. However, they were surprised when he used yokai magic to make a tree fall on them. One of the students lifted the tree and asked Haruko to talk to the child since he was human and wouldn't harm him. Haruko approached carefully and asked for the boy's name. The child, through tears, replied his name was Mei. Haruko, trying to calm him, gently asked if he had been separated from his family. The boy began crying harder, explaining he had lost his brother. Haruko, in an attempt to console him, admitted he was lost too. The two students overhearing this exchange were baffled and began questioning Haruko's story. Their confusion turned to suspicion when they noticed a glowing magical circle beneath Mei, proving the child wasn't human. Before they could react, the magic circle activated, and a pole dropped suddenly, knocking both students aside. Thinking quickly, Haruko promised Mei some ice cream if he stopped crying. The distraction worked, and Haruko took the boy to a nearby ice cream shop. As Mei licked his treat, Haruko gently asked if his brother had come to school here, to which the child nodded, still sniffling. Meanwhile, the other students couldn't resist asking Haruko how he had gotten lost. Haruko sheepishly admitted that he had wandered off from his group during a school trip and was now trying to find Nagoya Station. At this, the students stared at him incredulously. "You're in Kyoto, not Nagoya," they told him. Haruko froze, visibly stunned. When they pressed him about his sudden tension, he blurted out that he had been looking for a bathroom for a very long time. One of the students pointed to a restroom nearby, but Haruko, on the verge of panic, confessed that moving a single step might cause disaster. With no other choice, one of the students scooped Haruko up and sprinted toward the restroom. At the same time, Mei also appeared to need the restroom and left his doll on a chair before running off. When they returned, however, the doll was gone. A garbage truck had had taken it. Seeing Mei's devastation, Haruko sprang into action and ran after the truck without hesitation. The two students, now equally determined, grabbed a bicycle parked outside a police station and sped after him, ignoring the chaos they were causing. As they chased the truck, an unexpected sight unfolded. Their teacher had somehow been grabbed by a giant bird and was flailing mid-air. The students acted quickly, striking the bird, which dropped the teacher into the garbage truck. Amid the commotion, the teacher managed to grab the doll and tossed it toward Haruko. With perfect timing, Haruko caught the doll and returned it to Mei. The child smiled with relief and happiness, his tears replaced by pure joy. Just then, his older brother appeared, rushing forward to embrace him tightly. The brother, clearly relieved, turned to Haruko and the two students, expressing heartfelt gratitude for helping his little brother. As a token of thanks, the brother offered them a reward. Haruko quickly declined, but the other two students eagerly accepted the offer, unable to resist. Before they left, the younger boy handed Haruko a small, protective talisman. "I only have one," the child said earnestly, "so you'll have to divide it into 3 parts." Haruko accepted it with gratitude, and they bid farewell. However, Haruko couldn't help but notice the older brother's strained expression, a subtle but clear sign of his dislike for yokai. Afterward, as they walked together, Haruko asked the two students how they planned to divide the talisman. Without hesitation, they told Haruko to keep it, claiming they didn't need it. Haruko's face lit up with delight, touched by their kindness. The students, now more relaxed, suggested they make the most of the day and enjoy themselves, having successfully returned the child to his brother. Haruko, however, reminded them with exasperation that he was still lost and desperately needed directions. To his frustration, they ignored him completely, joking and chatting as if they hadn't heard. At that moment, the principal of the yokai school appeared out of nowhere, grabbing the two students by the collars. With an amused yet stern look, the principal announced that he had been watching everything they had done. Turning to Haruko, he mentioned spotting someone who looked just like him shouting from the top of a tower. Haruko immediately realized it must have been his brother searching for him and quickly excused himself, thanking the principal and waving goodbye. The principal, watching Haruko dash off, turned to the two students with a mischievous grin and declared it was now time for their punishment. In the present, two teachers reminisced about the story but admitted they couldn't quite remember what the student in question looked like, remaining unaware that it was Haruko. Later, Haruko returned, looking slightly unwell. One of the disguised teachers noticed his troubled expression and asked if something was bothering him. Haruko hesitated but eventually admitted that he felt envious of their strong friendship. He confessed that growing up, he hadn't built close relationships or created meaningful memories like they had, something he deeply regretted. Apologizing for his emotions, Haruko turned to leave. The teacher stopped him with reassuring smiles. "Aren't we worthy of being your friends?" one of them asked gently. "We're the same age after all. Even if we went to different schools, we're still close enough." Haruko was taken aback but felt a wave of happiness wash over him. One of the teachers added, "We might be colleagues at work, but outside of work, we're friends." Haruko smiled warmly, feeling a deep sense of connection he hadn't experienced before. "I look forward to working with you," he said sincerely, his earlier melancholy replaced with joy. Meanwhile, the students speculated about Haruko's current whereabouts in Kyoto. Sano, deep in thought, suddenly recalled an old memory from his childhood, getting lost in Kyoto and being helped by strangers. To his astonishment, he realized that he had been the same child whom gave Haruko the protective talisman. The group headed towards Tokyo City on a bus trip. The students began engaging in games, while others ate or gazed out the windows, observing the buildings as they passed, waiting to arrive at their destination. One of the students, Idaro, asked why Kamorimon City wasn't included in the trip's itinerary. Sano responded, stating that the most important thing was avoiding crowded places in the city during this time of the year. Meanwhile, a short student started looking around anxiously as though searching for something and said, "Where is it? I think I've lost it." Sano asked if something was wrong or if he had lost anything. The short student replied, "I think I forgot the teacher." Sano reassured him, jokingly saying it wasn't a big deal as long as it wasn't a personal belonging. Sano then called teacher Haruki to understand what had happened. Haruki explained that as he was about to board the bus, a group of employees approached, carried him off, and took him to the metro. Now, he was in the metro, carried along by the employees, and promised to meet them at the next station. However, Sano pointed out that they weren't meeting at the station Haruki mentioned, and called him a fool, explaining that he was lost. Haruki, confused, asked which route would lead to them. At this moment, one of the employees informed Haruki that he was heading in the wrong direction. Sano advised Haruki to turn back, but their call was abruptly cut off due to Haraki's phone battery dying. Back on the bus, Sano informed teacher Hataki about the situation. Hataki responded, confirming that Haruki was now lost. Nyoto suggested that since the teacher was lost, the whole class should take responsibility and search for him. The short-haired student proposed that the class should look for Haruki, while teacher Hataki and the other groups proceed to attend the lectures they were initially traveling for, as Haruki might eventually show up there. However, Hataki refused, emphasizing that they couldn't leave the students alone. At that moment, another teacher, nicknamed the Mouse, approached and offered to accompany the group to look after them. He suggested that Hataki focus on taking care of his fourth-year class. Internally, the Mouse thought that going with the students was a better option than attending boring lectures, and it would also give him an opportunity to visit some landmarks in Tokyo. Hataki agreed and announced that the teacher known as the Mouse would accompany the group and take full responsibility for them. This statement annoyed the Mouse, but Hataki also instructed him to remain in constant contact and report any incidents immediately. Additionally, Hataki reminded the students to adhere to the strict yoka school rules, emphasizing 3 key principles. No one should know their yoka identity. Their yoka powers must not be used in front of others, and they should always blend seamlessly among humans. The scene shifted to the Mouse, who gathered a group of rats and showed them a picture of Haruki, instructing them to search for him. He also mentioned that they might find him in the sewers. One of the rats, Higeta, questioned why Haruki would be in the sewers, suggesting that it was unlikely. The Mouse speculated that Haruki might have confused the sewers with the subway. Higeta, annoyed, pointed out the irony of traveling all this way only to search through the sewers. He added that he would rather explore the city's landmarks like those on the surface. Meanwhile, another group of students was nearby. Tamo commented that inhaling the smoke in the area might increase their intelligence, prompting them to gather and put their heads close to the source of the smoke. However, instead of feeling smarter, they felt as though their intelligence was diminishing. Idaro arrived after shopping and wearing new clothes, surprising the group. Otaku, startled by Idaro's appearance, questioned him about the outfit. Idaro dismissed the topic and urged everyone to stop playing around and focus on finding Haruki. However, Idaro's new look caught the attention of some girls, who approached him to take pictures with him. Otaku helped by taking their photos, which angered Tamo, who accused Idaro of being the least concerned about finding Haruki. Elsewhere, Nyoto was with his friends, asking about Mogina and the others. Nomid inquired if Mogina was visible from their location. The green-haired student noted that Nyoto's vision was extraordinary. Nomid suggested they search from a high vantage point, as most people appeared like specks to them, but Nyoto could see everyone in their true size. A flying student jokingly remarked to Nomid that he thought he could walk like others, only to be reminded that while he had legs, he couldn't use them. The flying student expressed disappointment, saying he could have prepared a remedy if he had known earlier. Nomid politely declined, stating he didn't need a cure, which frustrated the flying student. Nyoto then began searching for his team members via his phone. The scene shifted to the student Otagawa, who was on a call explaining that she had been with another student, Beniko, who got lost while searching for games. Meanwhile, Sano and the short student were talking. Sano mentioned speaking with subway staff, but none of them had seen Haruki. He admitted it was difficult to find him in such a crowded place. Suddenly, 2 identical-looking men approached them. They were twins and asked if they were students of teacher Haruki. The short student confirmed and then asked if one of them was Takashi. The man denied it, introducing himself as an officer. He invited them to follow him, revealing there was a yoka cafe where all the yoka spirits gathered. However, Sano felt something strange and grew uneasy, suspecting something was amiss. Haruki emerged from the subway pulling his bag, which caused him to stumble and fall to the ground. The charm gifted to him by the short student during a visit to his home became detached from the bag and disappeared. Haruki noticed it was missing and began searching left and right. When he looked ahead, he spotted it. As he approached, a stranger, who bore a resemblance to Sano, picked it up. Haruki addressed the stranger, expressing his belief that he was Sano. The stranger admired the charm, calling it beautiful. Haruki thanked him, explaining that it belonged to him and was a gift. The stranger revealed that he recognized Haruki as the teacher from the yoga school, having seen him on television before. Haruki, surprised, wondered if this person might also be a yoka. He laughed nervously, joking about his unexpected fame, then asked if the stranger had seen any yoka in the area. The stranger replied negatively, but asked if Haruki was lost, commenting that it was unusual for a teacher to be separated from his students. He offered to accompany Haruki, warning that being alone in this place could make it impossible to find his way out. The two went to a restaurant, ordered food, and began to talk. The stranger remarked that Haruki might not have realized the true nature of the yoga school. Haruki admitted that when he discovered the truth, he often tried to escape. The stranger praised Haruki's charm, calling it a powerful talisman against disasters. Haruki explained that he had received it from a lost student during his own days as a student in Kyoto. Haruki quickly finished his meal. The stranger then asked how Haruki planned to find his students, suggesting that a charged phone would make it easier to reconnect with them. Haruki admitted he had a phone, but its battery was dead. The stranger advised him to buy a charger from a nearby store. As Haruki stood up to leave for the store, a little girl ran into him, causing her to fall. Concerned, Haruki rushed to check on her, asking if she was all right. The girl reassured him that she was fine and began dusting off her clothes. Haruki then asked the stranger if the girl was alone or possibly lost. The stranger explained that she was not alone. She was Zashikyo, a being linked to the yokai in this area. He then encouraged Haruki to proceed to the store to purchase the charger. At the store, Haruki was delighted to finally buy a charger. The stranger then asked if Haruki had a student with black hair named Makoto. However, before Haruki could answer, two girls in school uniforms passed by, catching his attention. Fascinated by their appearance, Haruki found himself following them as they walked away. The stranger grabbed Haruki, using a wrestling-like move, and scolded him for walking away while someone was speaking, insisting that he should always listen. This sudden action drew the attention of those around them. As they argued, a fire truck sped past them, with people nearby spreading the news about a massive fire at the restaurant where they had just eaten. Haruki, alarmed, worried about the little girl, and ran towards the hotel to check on her. The stranger, observing this, muttered that he had anticipated such a reaction. When Haruki reached the store near the fire, firefighters were already directing water to extinguish the flames. The stranger arrived and told Haruki they should leave the area quickly. Haruki asked if the stranger had known about the fire. The stranger replied that it wasn't him but the little girl who had sensed something bad was about to happen. This reminded Haruki of his student Zakshi, who also had a knack for predicting disasters. The stranger confirmed that the little girl, like Zakshi, was part of a yokai type connected to households. He explained that when these beings wore green, the house was filled with happiness, but when their color turned red, they would leave, and misfortunes would soon follow within the house. The firefighters informed their chief that the fire had been extinguished and that there were no casualties. Haruki, hearing this, felt relieved. However, a strange chant and light emanated from the burned building, catching his attention. Fearing the little girl might still be inside, Haruki rushed to the back of the building. He recalled a similar chant used by one of his students to seal her room door, and thought the girl might have accidentally activated the charm in her panic. The stranger followed Haruki and warned him against taking further risks, arguing that he could cause unnecessary harm and reminding him that he was human, not like the yokai. Haruki admitted he had once thought the same thing when he first joined the yokai school, but now he refused to run away from this challenge. He believed he couldn't ignore the possibility that this girl might one day become one of his students. And as a teacher, it was his duty to guide all yokai students. Determined, Haruki poured water over himself and dashed into the building to save the girl. The stranger remarked sarcastically, "So, this is the famous teacher Haruki the short student spoke of. His actions make me feel like throwing up." Inside the building, Haruki noted that the smoke hadn't risen too high, giving him some relief. He began searching for the little girl and soon found the charm she had activated. Using his power, he quickly dispelled the charm. The little girl was inside the room, crying in fear. Haruki broke the door down and entered, comforting her and ensuring she was safe. He carried her outside, but shortly after, a massive explosion of fire erupted behind them. Haruki suddenly remembered the charger he had purchased earlier and used it to call Sano, explaining that he was in great danger, surrounded by flames and unable to find a way out. Sano asked how the situation had unfolded, to which Haruki replied that he had been trying to save a little girl from the fire. Haruki then inquired about Otagawa. Otagawa responded that he could hear him clearly. Haruki asked if Otagawa could use his power to create a thunderstorm and summon rain to extinguish the fire. Otagawa questioned whether the fire was small or large. Sano interrupted, stating that regardless of the fire's size, they would head to Haruki's location immediately and asked for his exact whereabouts. Just as Haruki was about to reveal his location, a large rock fell on his phone, destroying it and cutting off the call. Sano then contacted Nyoto, asking him to use his vantage point from the tower tower to identify any location with a fire. Nyoto, who had left the tower to eat with his friends, didn't admit this but quickly devised a plan. He asked the flying student to use his special medicine to create a diversion that would attract the attention of the people in the street. While the crowd was distracted, Nyoto used his fish companion to soar into the sky and locate the fire. Successfully spotting the fire, Nyoto informed Sano of its exact location. However, while flying, they were caught by the Yoka police, who reprimanded them for flying publicly among humans. Despite this, Sano insisted that they needed to reach Haruki immediately. A friend pointed out that the distance was great and would take at least 20 minutes. Otagawa suggested that the short student transform into an airplane to speed things up. The short student transformed but wasn't large enough to carry everyone, instead circling them in frustration. As Sano deliberated, memories of past events flooded his mind: their physical training test, the kidnapping incident, and the school camp. He suddenly exclaimed, "The school camp!" and sprinted forward, seemingly having realized something. Meanwhile, Haruki, wounded by a falling rock, was bleeding heavily. The little girl, though scared, tried to check on him, ensuring he was still conscious. Haruki reassured the girl, telling her not to worry as he was fine. When he checked his phone, he found it completely destroyed, which angered him since he couldn't contact anyone else. Suddenly, he noticed something in the area, and as he grabbed it, the object grabbed him in return and pulled him outside. It guided him toward a staircase, urging him to use the upper steps instead of the lower ones, which collapsed moments later. A small figure told Haruki this was the most it could do before disappearing, leaving him in front of a large door. When Haruki entered, he found himself on the rooftop of the building. The overwhelming smoke made him nauseous, causing him to collapse. The little girl tried to drag him away from the flames, but Haruki told her he couldn't move due to inhaling too much smoke and asked her to leave him. However, she refused to abandon him. Feeling something in his hand, Haruki opened his palm to find the charm he had received from the short student. Memories of the moment the boy gave him the charm, saying it would protect him from disasters, flooded his mind. Determined, Haruki began crawling slowly to escape the fire. Suddenly, rain began to fall, extinguishing some of the flames. Looking up, he thought it was Otagawa's power. However, he then saw Sano and the other students flying toward him in the sky. When Sano saw the little girl, he yelled at Haruki, calling him a fool for risking his life to save her. Haruki apologized, saying he didn't mean to worry them. The group then climbed onto the back of the flying student and soared into the air to escape the danger. As they flew, they noticed the fire spreading rapidly. Suddenly, a water pipe burst, and Higeta emerged from another pipe, followed by the mouse and a swarm of rats. It turned out they had caused the pipe to break in the first place. Haruki questioned whether the water pipe had burst on its own, and speculated that perhaps a god of luck was helping them. Sano mocked the idea of a god of luck, but Haruki expressed his gratitude for the flying student. Laughing, the flying student revealed that he wasn't the student, but an undercover officer. He explained that Sano had contacted him for help. The group continued flying quickly to reunite with the rest of the class. However, they were stopped by the Yoka police, who warned them against flying recklessly. The group apologized and continued on their way.